6:11. Call the meeting to order. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes of April 11th, 2023 Select Board meeting.
So, second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
5-0. All right, we have some additions. There's, under old business, Grace Cottage request. Under new business, a liquor license for Riverbend, tobacco license for Riverbend, and then under, there's a town, this is under new business as well, a town hall request for the Lucier family. And there's another one for Dick Jackson. We'll go right to members of the public first, and we have Green Mountain Power here with a presentation and question and answers. Right ahead.
Great. My name is Tiana Smith, and I work for Green Mountain Power. Normally when we are not in storm mode, I work on electrification and sustainability, but it's really all hands on deck when we have storms and storm restoration. And so during that time, I communicate with the town officials and emergency managers, and then also manage a team that reaches out to our critical care customers. So that's folks that are on residential medical equipment that requires electricity. So we proactively reach out to that team. We'll talk more about it. So here tonight, really just to talk to you about what we've been seeing this past winter with storms, how they're changing, and then what our communications has looks like during that time, and then also what we're planning around resiliency to combat climate change and all of the things that we're seeing. So with me tonight is Don Mills. He's the operations supervisor out of our Brattleboro district, which serves Townshend here, and then Mike Burke, who is our head of operations across the entire state. So with that, just a little bit about who we are. Our service territory is 3/4 of the state. We have 272,000 customers that cross 202 towns, mostly rural, and about 510 employees, almost 300 of which are members of the IBEW Local 300. We're really proud of our energy mix, which on an annual basis is 100% carbon free, 78% renewable right now, moving towards 100% renewable by 2030. And with that, I will turn it over to Mike to talk about storms.
Thanks, everyone. I just want to acknowledge that it's been a really tough winter. We know that. It's been tough on customers. It's been tough on towns. It's been kind of tough on our team. And we actually have plans to address that. Just quickly on this winter. So we actually opened up a climate plan with the state, our regulators, back in around 2019. And with that, we were asking to move forward resiliency projects on a much more urgent manner. That went into effect in 2020, and in this area, we've actually been pushing pretty hard to get a lot of projects done, which I'll talk about in a minute. But first of all, I just want to talk, so normally in any given winter in the last 10 years, we see 1 or 2 heavy wet snowstorms and 8 or 10 regular snow. When I say regular snow, the kind that doesn't stick to trees, the kind that isn't like glue, and we're happy to have it. With a drier snowfall, we actually will go through a whole storm without one outage. You know, maybe somebody slides into a pole, something like that, but it does not affect trees, it does not affect lines. This year, 9 out of 10 of our snowstorms were heavy wet snowstorms. We hadn't had what we call a major storm, which is what our regulators judge as severe damage, tons of customers out, things like that, hit certain criteria in 4 years. The last one we had was Halloween 2019. You probably remember the high winds and flooding and things like that. We had many minor storms, specifically in this area. The geographic location of here is pretty unique. But all of that being said, we've had 4 major storms since December 16th. All 4 of those concentrated pretty heavily right in this area. The one event that wasn't quite as bad down here, but still affected you, was the high wind event, where we saw 72-mile-an-hour winds at Burlington International, the second highest wind they've ever clocked. So things are changing. In the event down here in the last one, our crews, and I know your road crews and everyone, were dealing with things they haven't dealt with. Not being able to move around town, not being able to get across roads, things like that. And that was definitely different. Our crews were telling us in the field that things that usually took them 15 minutes were taking them 2 hours, because they had to put snowshoes on, walk 100 yards out to follow our safety rules, tag poles, things like that, and it was just different. In that event, we actually always follow, we have close relationships with, we'll hit a slide on that soon, with the National Weather Service, and we actually asked them for a quantitative precipitation total after that event. We had measurements of 5.5 inches right at the border in Massachusetts and Vermont. We had another 4.5 in the Wilmington area. We have a big hole in the state right here, if you look at the QPF maps, where they don't have measuring equipment, at least that they show on their maps in this area. Since we got more snow in this area than anywhere else, we're expecting that we probably had at least 5 inches in this area. So what does that mean? If we took all the snow and melted it down, we were within an inch of what we got for Irene, just to give people an idea of what happened with that event. The system was supposed to leave this area on Tuesday morning. It actually stayed around until Wednesday at about 4 p.m. when we were talking to Don, and at about 3 o'clock Wednesday, and he's saying it hasn't stopped snowing yet. We actually, during those 48 hours when we were working to clear roads, we were putting circuits on, they were locking back out. We put 25,000 customers on during that 48-hour span when the snow kept falling. We lost 25,000, all during that 48 hours. Really, our restoration almost didn't start until Wednesday night because of the fact that we were clearing roads, working like that. That's just a review of that. Again, we started the resiliency plan. Yeah, go to that one. So, again, I'm going to come back to this storm more, ask for your feedback on it, but quickly I'm going to talk about the projects we have and what we want to do. So, we've had projects on the books for Route 30 from Jamaica all the way into Brattleboro through Dummerston since about 2019, about 4.5 years. We have been struggling with permitting, getting everything on board to be able to file for an Act 250 permit. In the state of Vermont, we actually, depending on what town you're in, if you're in a 1-acre town, which I believe Townshend is, I believe all the towns along Route 30 are 1 acre except for Newfane. If we build 2,200 new feet, we have to get an Act 250 permit. So we are actually trying to address that, working with local legislators, working with local senators, things like that, on how we can try to expedite that more. But we actually have plans for spacer cable, which is this that you see here. If you drive back toward the Ball Mountain Dam.
Town is asking why it took 5 days.
You need to mute
to power
people
down.
because I can't do it.
It's set now.
Okay.
We actually have plans to do underground in small sections and spacer cable from Jamaica all the way back to Dummerston and partially into Brattleboro. This is the conductor that you see. It's got a 1/2-inch steel messenger on the top of the line, so if a tree lands on it, branches land on it. We've actually had car pole accidents. Everything, even if the poles break, it stays in the air on the steel messenger. We come in later, remove trees, put the poles back in, lift it back up, put it on the pole, it stays on. The line right now that goes in that same exact area from Jamaica to Dummerston, there's actually nothing wrong with the line other than it's bare wire, and with the higher winds and the heavy wet snow and the trees failing all the time, it can affect that line. So that plan, if we get some relief from the permitting issues that we're dealing with, we actually, you've probably seen the flags on the poles if you drive all along Route 30, that's what that is for. We plan to work to try to get that done before the snow flies again next year. There are some things that have to line up and why we're working on the other issues that I talked about. and that's the goal. What you see here is called cable and conduit. We're actually looking to the spurs that come off that main line, literally like the line that leaves the Townshend Dam and goes out towards Dover. Wherever we can bury it, we're going to try to bury it. Obviously, we have some geological issues there with ledge and river crossings and things like that that we may have to pop up over ground. And if we can't get in the ground, we plan to do that as well. In areas where we've run this in the state, we've gone from literally in a heavily treed area, maybe 15 outages a year to 1 or 2. It drastically improves the experience that our customers have, which is why we're adding so much urgency to this. The bottom right hand is just since 1980. You can see the extreme precipitation events like I'm talking about with the warmer air, the warmer temperatures, snowing at 33 degrees. The Northeast is the heaviest extreme precipitation events in the United States, 74% more from 1980 to now. We follow these things, that's why we're trying to move all those projects forward. Storage. So many of our customers in this area have storage. We have a Powerwall program, which individual customers can actually have 2 Powerwalls in their homes. We send out notifications to those customers that have the Powerwalls. We're working on coming up with systems, geo-targeting, things like that, where we can send messages to all our customers. But if you're a Powerwall customer right now, we send you out a notice, hey, we have some severe weather coming in. We tell them that, so if they have electric hot tubs or things like that, they can adjust how they're using that system in order to keep their furnace, their fridge, their lights on. We've had customers last 8 days with those Powerwalls. So we also have what we call microgrids. We're putting one in Brattleboro, which is a utility scale where we can have 200 or 300 customers isolate from the overall grid, and they can power through based on the bigger storage for a utility scale area to be able to ride through an event disconnected from the grid. We have 5 of those in the state of Vermont, and as we prove them out, we'll do it more and more depending on the needs of communities, things like that. The batteries, we actually have a cap on that right now, that we're only allowed 500 a year. We have almost a 2-year waiting list for that. We're working with our regulators right now to ask them to let us remove that cap and be able to give these to any customers that want them. So more to come on that. We're working through the regulatory process on that. These are the projects, so Route 30 again, all the way. The Route 30 corridor is literally the main line tie between all the substations from Rawsonville to Jamaica to Dummerston back into Brattleboro. By tying that together with this larger conductor, it'll actually create a system where we can backfeed in either direction. Right now we can do that with a certain amount of load. We can't carry everything. So think of Grace Hospital, Grace Cottage. With this new line, we're actually talking about putting in electronic reclosers that if one line goes out, we can, with an automatic healing system, get power back to Grace Cottage. And remember, not only is that larger conductor that can carry the whole load, but it's also storm hardened, so it'll probably be pretty rare that we ever lose both ends of it. So this will be instant betterment for the community, I can promise you that. Route 100 Wardsboro, that feeds up into the village of Wardsboro, West Wardsboro. Same thing there with the spacer cable that we talked about. That is ready to go. We just need to be able to get the permits to do it. We're working on that now. And then the West Hill Road, Townshend Dam, all the way out to Dover. That's where since it's so rural out there, we're just trying to put it underground. There's really nothing roadside there. Most of it's, probably 75% of it's cross country. Yeah. So, you know, these 4 projects alone in this area will really change the experience everyone has. Again, it's not that the lines they're not made for 70-mile-an-hour winds with 80-foot trees 25 feet away from them or 10 feet away from them, depending on the right-of-way we have. This new conductor in the underground can handle that. So outreach a little bit. This is the part Tiana was talking about. So We do outreach to our Powerwall customers. We're putting in a system, we managed to get to about 50,000 customers before this last event. We're putting in a system that we hope to be able to reach all 272,000 customers, to be able to give them a heads up of what we're seeing as far ahead of time as we can. And then also Tiana has a team that reaches out to all local emergency planners. You've probably seen the emails that come out, some of you. And not only do we have to do outreach to let you know what we're seeing is coming down the road for weather, but as soon as we stop taking outages, we actually have systems that tell us, okay, based on the amount of crews we have, based on the amount of calls we have, we can tell you that we expect the last customers in your area to come back on at this time. That's something we've been doing for a while. Certainly if there's people in here that you think should be on that local emergency planning, town leaders that aren't on there, we can get you set up to do that. The critical care customer list, I want to talk about that a little bit and let you know what we do there. So we have customers that have medical devices, things like that, that they count on for their health. We have a critical care list that we make calls ahead of storms, send out communication ahead of storms to let those customers know. Right now we can reach all of those customers and let them know what's coming so they can start to make plans depending on the severity of the event. Once the event hits, we can push a button at any time of day and it'll tell us every single critical care customer that is out of power. Tiana's team, there's probably 6 or 7 of them, they will go through that list. I think at the peak here, we had 200 or 300 critical care customers out statewide, and they call every single one of those customers. They check in with those customers to see what they're dealing with, what their needs are. And the reason they do that is, I'm gonna get to a slide in a minute. The critical care list is not because we're gonna run and restore your line. So the way the electrical grid works, we have to do the transmission lines first, the main line feeder second, substation second, and then we can start to go out to the feeds, the more rural areas. So we actually use that critical care list to let the customers know what we're seeing, to help them make decisions on how they should react and what plan they should take to make sure that they're safe. In this storm alone, we also have a close relationship with Vermont Emergency Management as well as local emergency planners, and we will reach out to local emergency managers first if we come across a customer that we're concerned about. You know, things that we've run into, we've heard customers tell us that they have a propane heater running inside their house. That is a trigger right off for us. We'll often call the local fire department and ask them to go run a CO2 test on that customer's home, things like that. And then if it's a customer that has no family, we've run across a lot of that. No families, no connections with neighbors, things like that. We'll actually call local emergency planners and ask them to go check on them. If they don't have the resources to do that, we revert to Vermont Emergency Management. And in this storm, I believe we did that numerous times in Brattleboro, I think Townshend, I think Newfane, where they did get people to help respond to some of these customers that we were concerned about. And in one case, brought them to a shelter in Brattleboro to make sure they were okay. So I know you don't see that. That's all going on behind the scenes during these events. And then obviously locally, where Don comes in, we are trying to make more and more connections between our crews, road managers, things like that, so that we can work together as closely as we can. And a lot of times we'll actually connect a crew with a road crew, and they'll go and hit a lot of the roads that are blocked, which is, again, any call we get in to our 1-800 number gets logged right into a map, and it tells us where there's down lines, where roads are blocked, things like that. In an event like this, where it was so widespread, having that connection with the road crew is really helpful, because that can help us prioritize when there's so many different calls. So, you know, I don't know if we have those connections here. If not, we should follow up.
Yeah, we definitely will. I think somebody was calling Charlie at times, and
Okay.
Charlie was relaying that information to me.
Yeah. We were communicating with, I think, a few of you here on the board during the storm. So, you know, we'll continue to try to do that. And again, we understand how tough this storm was. We understand, we want to make it better. This event was definitely, I've even had crews that have been through a million of these storms have said to us, this was the toughest one I've ever experienced. People that have been here 30 years. And I think it was just the amount of snow and not being able to move. That's what made it different. 5 inches of heavy wet snow, I actually would rather have 2 inches of ice than 5 inches and over 40 inches of heavy wet snow, for the simple fact that with ice, we can put chains on, we can put creepers on, and we can move. In this storm, just like you were having trouble getting to areas, our crews were having trouble even getting to areas. The Townshend dam line, we actually had to enter from back in Newfane along the road there to even get there. And as you know, there's no power lines for the first 3 miles, but the crews had to fight through that 3 miles to even get there. So it was quite an event. We're not going to say it was quite an event, and that's why it was so bad. We actually want to get better, do more storm hardening, put more underground, because we actually feel this may be our future. Again, 20% used to be heavy snow. This year it was like 90%. So it's something we have to plan for and address, and all the things I'm talking about is how we plan on doing that. Storm prep. We actually have 3 forecasters internally that forecast just for Vermont utilities and VTrans, and then we also have a close relationship with the National Weather Service in Albany, who covers Bennington and Wyndham counties, and then the National Weather Service in Burlington, who covers the rest of the state. They call us, we call them. It's an open door policy of what we're seeing to relay to them and what they're seeing too. The 24 hours before the event, they were showing 2 feet on the summits. We were showing 12 to 18 everywhere else. We got over 40 inches. So we did almost double our workforce before this storm, and when it went to over 40 inches, we actually needed even more than that, and by the end of the storm, we had over 300 line crews here, which is quadruple our normal workforce. We have outage prediction tools that, based on the forecast, tell us that. Again, the fact that it stalled due to the high pressure system in Canada and just sat here for 2 days, none of the forecasts picked that up, and that is why it ended up with a lot more damage than we were looking at when we were prepping for the storm. If you were watching the forecast, you saw that almost every 6 hours they expanded the warnings further and further north until Tuesday evening it was all the way to the Canadian border. It was only Rutland, Windsor County by Monday night, Tuesday morning. So where we thought we'd have another whole set of resources to move south, we ended up having to send resources up there too, because they're experiencing damage. Not to the point that we were down here, but you can't just drive away from the damage up there either. So that's storm prep. I talked about over 650 field workers. Everybody at GMP has a second role. My role is probably the closest to the same Don's too, day to day, as well as in a storm where we're leading the operations teams. In an event like this, we actually, so that we don't have bottlenecks, we actually break our dispatching into 3 or 4 dispatchers per district. So we go from, on a normal day, 4 dispatchers, we go out to 45 or 50 dispatchers, just because the amount of things that are coming in. We've learned this over the years. Other utilities around New England that come here praise us for how we do it and how efficient we are. This storm, it was, even with those systems set up, it was a battle, just because of the amount of damage, how tough it was getting around, things like that. So this is just a picture of, we have a mutual aid group. Some people, often like fire departments they have mutual aid. They call on neighboring towns, things like that. We have a mutual aid system that allows us to get the extra 250 to 300 line crews. In this event, unfortunately, the whole region, all the Northeast, including New York, was affected by this. Our peak, we get up to 40,000 customers out. New Hampshire was 110, Maine was 200,000, New York was about 110,000 in their rural areas. Unfortunately, it wasn't in the city, so they were facing the same things we were. So, the first couple days, it did, even though we brought in crews all the way from West Virginia, Canada, New Brunswick, Ontario, and Quebec, which is in some cases a 2-day drive. We needed to go even further than that in the end. Restoration process, so we have a storm plan that we all train on constantly. Our first priority is getting roads cleared, keeping roads cleared, and then we start to restore after that. Now, certainly if a Route 30 is blocked and there's 2,000 customers on that Route 30, then when we clear the road, we're gonna put that back together, because without that line, nobody's coming back on. Just like the transmission line. If the transmission line is out, people often say, why am I not seeing a truck in front of my house? There's a tree on the line right there. We have to restore the transmission first, the substation second, which is over here, and then this main line, which carries every tap between here and Brattleboro. We have to get those things up first before we can even start to think about going out on the side taps. So when you think sometimes you don't see us, it's probably because we're working on the transmission. Even though we have good sized right-of-ways in the transmission, we actually did have 3 faults on the transmission in this area, and a couple faults on other transmission lines heading north out of Brattleboro. So even those areas with the bigger right-of-ways, we lost some trees that actually got to us. Again, that just shows how widespread, oh, you can't see it, but if you look, all of the northeast is lit up in orange and red and yellow, showing how widespread it was. So I've spoke a lot. We're happy to answer questions, happy to take any feedback.
I'd be the first one to like to talk. I was the one that talked with Mrs. Smith.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have one problem at all with Green Mountain Power's linemen.
Mm-hmm.
The people that you call and they answer the phone, fine.
Mm-hmm.
Your tree guys suck. Ask Boonduff is out there and they are hiding from the problems. They are parked for 3 hours in Riverbend parking lot. They're parked in side roads all over the place. And I understand the part of back current from people not using proper generator mechanisms to heat their, or to operate their house and back feeding it through their dryer, you know, plugs and all that stuff. I understand that. But this is what Aspunda goes to school for and gets trained for. You go out with a multimeter, you can tell whether it's electrified or not. These guys are sitting all over our roads, summertime, wintertime, emergencies, non-emergencies. They don't amount to anything. We are paying for it, not you. Green Mountain Power doesn't pay for it, we pay for it. And it's ridiculous. And that's when I talked with you, I was furious about it. You tried to tell me about what was going on in Townshend while you were sitting in Rutland, and I wasn't listening to it. And, you know.
I heard about that phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when we have a major road in our town that is shut down for 3.5 days, and you have to drive off the road to get back onto the road in order to travel through, that's not flying with us.
Yep.
And I mean, I understand everybody else has a crisis going on at the same time, but I'm not talking about electric. I'm talking about traveling. You can't hold these people up in their house for 3-4 days and think they have 40-50 gallons of fuel to run their generators and whatever it is. You need to make it so people can at least egress and regress their property, power or not. Like, okay, fine. I have a problem with health. I can go visit my family south of here that there isn't a problem with this stuff. Could you make it so that we could do that? You know, not have Aspunda sitting down for 3 hours, as I told you, and I asked you, do you want me to get you the video film of them sitting there for 3 hours? And you argued with me. And it's like, they sat there for that amount of time. They sat at the end of Riverdale Road for 3 hours on Thursday.
So
Listen-
there's OSHA rules that I'd like to speak to.
I don't even, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
I understand VOSHA rules, I understand OSHA, I understand all of it.
If you think a
To be
tree
honest
crew
with-
can run a tester on a line, you don't understand OSHA rules.
Well then, okay, that's fine. Then I guess I don't understand anything. You know what I understand? Is not being able to get an 80-year-old person not even be able to get out of their place for 3 to 4 days.
And I completely agree.
This young lady
Yeah.
lives 2 miles or 200 feet down the road. She didn't have electric for 3 days on Route 30. I mean, I understand, okay, there's places you gotta go to first, here and there, but you left us handicapped, and you left a lot of people handicapped. You have people roaming around all over the place for all sorts of money, and they're getting paid to do absolutely nothing besides stand there and wait for you to make a phone call. So I think you dropped the ball, VOSHA, OSHA, and any other thing. So,
Right, so our number one priority is safety, not only the safety of our employees, but the safety of the public as well. So there's not people running around with multimeters testing everything. It's line workers that know what they're doing. They'll test the line and then they ground it to make it safe. It's not dead until it's grounded. Okay, so like if the wire's laying there and you don't think there's any energy in it, you shouldn't get near it, you shouldn't touch it. So we're trying to keep everybody safe, including our tree trimmers. So there are times where the tree trimmer's waiting for the line crew to come out, tag it so that no energy can get in there with the lockout tagout procedures, and then ground the line so it's considered dead.
And we're
I'm
not
gonna
saying we
somewhat
were,
call BS on you because I understand there's some electricians in the area that have an idea of what's going on and they're saying, this is kind of like
Right,
what it
yeah,
is.
number one,
Me,
safety.
myself, I'm not gonna stand here and tell you anything about electric because I don't know anything about electric.
Right, there's a difference
Besides, I
between
flick a switch and it works or it doesn't.
de-energized and grounded dead. There's two different things. One, there could be no energy running through it, but if there's no grounds on it, it's not dead. So it's not safe to work on.
yeah, and we're not saying that we performed perfectly in this storm. We're talking about ways to improve every single day. This storm was tougher and, we had some things out there that we are trying to talk about how we can get to things quicker. Again, leaving restoration off the map. Just get to areas where we can make sure roads are cleared. That is our main focus. And, I know there was some single customers out that it seems like stop and get them. But if there was other calls with 30, 40 customers on it, those are what we concentrate on.
There's nothing I'm saying about the amount of customers here compared to the amount of customers here. I'm saying that, for instance, Wisball Hill sat for out with, nobody went to it for Thursday at 6 o'clock. It got opened up. 2 people from Quebec came down on foot, went up with chainsaws and opened the road up and made the road so that they can go up and down it. There was nobody from Green Mountain Power there. There was nobody from any other power company there.
They're line workers.
They were guys with chainsaws on foot.
Yep.
And it took them an hour and a half. It took 3.5 days to get somebody there.
Yep.
Do you get that part?
I do.
An hour and a half.
I'm agreeing. We want to get to areas like that.
Well,
sooner.
my point is that, there's guys standing all over this town doing nothing that could have gone there. And it's nothing to do with Green Mountain Power. It's got to do with your tree people. Whoever's getting paid off at Green Mountain Power, it would be nice to have them push a little money to some of these other tree companies that are around and get them on board. Because what you have going on right now isn't sufficient.
That's good feedback. The thing with the tree crews, they cannot go there unless if the wire's on the ground, they cannot go there unless it's been tested and grounded. That's an OSHA rule. It's something that we won't do. Certainly we want to use every single person that's here on a storm as efficiently as possible. And Charlie gave me the feedback you were giving him on the tree crews, and he said he tried to explain how that we station them somewhere, so as soon as a crew has a line grounded, they can send them there. And I understand how that looks. If I was a customer, I would feel the same way you
So if a crew sits there for 3 hours and they're not doing anything. And 5 miles away, or 5 minutes away, there's all sorts of stuff they can do. But they sit there for 3 hours hoping that this line crew asks them to do something. That's worthy time? Or would it be more worthy for them to go up the road, open the road up, take a Green Mountain Power person with them, get the road opened? They're still within 10 minutes of where the problem is that your men are working on. So they could be back there within 10 minutes, presumably, but yet working on 3 other things and not sitting, drinking coffee, looking at Facebook and carrying on.
Yeah, I think in this storm too, there were multiple times where the feed for the town here comes out of West Jamaica and it runs down Route 30 there, and there were multiple times where we'd get that line back on and then we'd lose it again because another tree hit it. And then we kept working to get that line back on, kept trying to feed it, and then finally when we did get the main line back on, then we could start hitting all the other feeders coming off of that. And two, I think another thing that we need to work on as well is the communication between the town, whether it's the road foreman and myself during these storms. I had communication with Marlboro and a couple of the other towns where they were calling me and letting me know what their priorities were as far as roads and stuff like that, getting trees off the line. So our goal here today is to open that line of communication. Maybe if I could contact the road foreman and talk to him. I know I tried to call on a couple of occasions, but I guess in most cases they were out plowing. But I know like even Brattleboro, there were times where there were trees on either side of them. We'd cut them clear. The road crew would get through that area, and then another tree would fall in front of them. So we were opening and closing roads and trying to keep the lines up. And like for 3 days, we were getting caught in spots. And we got the lines back on in some occasions, and then they went back out 2-3 hours later. And then we got to keep working our way out. So we got to keep grounding those lines, removing those trees, working our ways back out.
I think important perspective too is that this storm hit 121 towns. So as we've been out talking, it feels when you're sitting here in Townsend like this is happening to Townsend, but this is happening across southern Vermont with 2,000 events I think we had.
3,000.
3,000 events that we had. That's 3,000 isolated incidents that our crews are responding to. And that's the guys that are coming down and using the chainsaw. And, without sounding overly defensive, I think that sometimes, and especially as I'm talking to customers, it seems like a really simple thing to do. Simply send the tree crew to go do this and work with a light and power, person to do this. And it's a very complicated process. And the number one thing you have to do is keep people safe. And sometimes that means that you may be out for 3 and 4 days as we're clearing hazards, making roads safe, and it's not just happening here in Townsend or Newfane or Brattleboro, it's happening across all of southern Vermont.
I've lived here my whole entire life, never anywhere else. I understand power outage. I'm not even talking power outages.
Yeah, you're
I'm talking about
trees.
going up and down the road. Glenn Beatty is right over there. He's our fire chief. Glenn, could you have driven the truck up Route 35 a mile past our fire department?
We would have had trouble in a lot of places.
But you would have had a hard time getting underneath the line that I'm talking about. I'm saying that
Yep.
I'm not talking about power. I'm not talking about restoring our town in power. I'm talking about making it so that if somebody is out of power, they can't get anywhere, they can at least remotely get within a situation where they could get out of their place and go somewhere else.
Yeah,
Whether
we're
it's
agreeing
in-
on that.
I don't think you're not I don't think you're disagreeing with me. What my point is that when shit hit the fan, we were left kind of flapping in the wind as far as certain things with our town. And that's where I'm coming from, where it's like, that's why I called you and was as enthusiastic as I was about it. So,
You call it enthusiastic.
well, yeah, remotely. So,
Yep.
It's an interesting conversation about logistics, and I think it makes a lot of sense to check in on your tree crews on everybody's behalf.
Absolutely.
Also, you mentioned there's a critical care list that you compile.
Yep.
Does that help prioritize where you're putting your efforts, or does it just put you in contact with those people?
It puts us in contact with those people because again, I know it went off now, but literally, if that person happens to live 8 miles out on a rural road,
You can only work your way in.
yeah, we have to restore everything from the transmission all the way out to there. So, and when things are still coming down, we can't even tell the customer when that will, outages have to stop before we can start to say when customers will be coming back on.
Sure, okay.
So in that case, we try to help them make decisions best for them in their particular circumstance, how to keep themselves safe. So,
Okay, and so in those situations, the power and the road clearing are hand in hand, because in order to get any further, you need to have managed the beginning of the problem on that road, stretch of road, for example.
correct.
Yeah, there's plenty of cases where my crews are actually cutting trees off the road that were nowhere near the wires,
I
just to
see.
get to where the wires were down.
I see, okay. And you mentioned logistically talking between the road crews in Townsend and your crews. Is there any example you can think of where you're working together, where you're out there slashing and
Yeah, it's plenty of time, I've contacted the state in the past, as well as I have a good relationship with Brattleboro, where they'll come out with a loader when the tree's too big for us to move, and help us move that out of the way, and occasions like that, where it goes hand in hand. There was one spot where the Brattleboro truck was caught between 2 trees, and the lines were down on top of the truck, and they sat there for a couple hours till we could even get to them, so.
you're probably like, who do we call?
Yeah, and then, right,
Okay.
yeah.
And then you guys mentioned putting power in the ground. Is there anything we as a board or a town can do to help expedite that?
Thank you very much, because I meant to talk about that. And so the, if you happen to drive up West Hill all the way to Dover, a lot of it's in Townsend. If you look to your left, it's ledges and boulders. If you look to your right, it's kind of the same. The one place that is kind of a level spot that, again, I don't know the geology of that road, but if we were to be able to get down 4 feet on the shoulder of that road, that is certainly something we'd like to talk about. We would apply for a permit to do that, and then we're just not even dealing, well, the trees will still be there, but the lines will be underground. So
Okay.
that is the plan. We do plan to come with you for that.
This is in the works, it sounds like.
Yeah, so there's a couple of places where we're already starting to do that. We buried it underground along Route 9, and then also in the town of Dover, we have a job plan for Harris Road where we're gonna run a line straight in the roadway itself.
Okay.
So it'll be buried 4 feet down in the roadway. We'll replace everything back to the way it is now, and road foreman as well as the town, we're all on board with that.
Alright.
We've also talked to the town of Marlboro as well, same idea, running it straight down the roadway and having like a splice box on the side of the road, same way the phone company does basically.
Okay. And in the future, this is probably the direction your utility company is gonna be moving.
Correct. For more rural areas, that's the plan. For lines like that tie the substations together along Route 30, it's a much bigger conductor. It's a little bit hard to do it cost effectively underground. But yeah, for the rural areas, if we can bury it, we want to do that.
And is that the lines you're talking about replacing from Brattleboro up with the spacers?
Along Route 30, yes.
Yeah.
A lot, there may be sections, we're looking at conditional undergrounding, so if you look at, there's a section where you come out of Newfane Village, where you go down a hill, and there's 80-foot trees on both sides. Right now, the line is overhead. It doesn't feed any customers for about 600 feet where those 80-foot trees are. So we'll look at possibly that 600 feet, just go underground, because we don't need to feed any customers, and it just takes those 80-foot trees right out of the equation. So there's a combination of mostly overhead and underground on the main lines, and then on the more rural areas, our plan is just to literally try to get as much of it as we can underground.
I know we had some townspeople who were here last week talking about the roads. I will say for me, it was helpful to see that you're already thinking of proactive, like to know that the lines are being replaced. Like that's very helpful to know in a moving forward situation of like, whether you need trees crews or not, there's still potentially more power happening because the lines are still functioning.
Correct.
So knowing that there are proactive solutions coming is really helpful. but, you know.
Bob, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks for coming. I really appreciate that because an after-action report like this is invaluable. It's a learning experience for all of us. Rob had a good point about the tree crews. I've seen some of that myself. You trim lines all the time, and sometimes things are just out of the right of way. It's dead, it's 80 feet tall, it's leaning towards our power lines, and nothing happens until 2 weeks later, it breaks the pole in the right of way. So I mean, some of these things are kind of like no-brainers to me, but you've got restrictions on your right of way, I understand that. But to your point earlier about contacting the road foreman, we ought to be able to learn from this. We've got radios, we've got ways of communicating. Your crews do work with chainsaws. By and large, I think your crews do an outstanding job. And I really like to hear that the line is going underground where it's way out in the woods and you can't get to it easily. So I see some real positive things here. When I lose power, it almost always comes out of Stone Arch Way. And I was told at one point in time that that was old co-op equipment and it's antiquated. When is it going to be fixed?
Yeah, so that area there, like anything that was old co-op areas, a lot of times they went like line of sight, straightest route possible, as opposed to moving it roadside or putting it roadside. So it's an older system in most cases, and it kind of got inherited by CV, and then when Green Mountain Power and CV merged, then Green Mountain Power kind of took it over. And the goal is, yes, to improve all that system. So everything past like Scott Bridge that feeds up that hillside there, we were out there last week with engineers, right, looking around and seeing what we could do. We talked to landowners out there to try to get permission from them as well. And there are some areas where we can stay in the existing right of way and just bury it underground. So all that stuff's in the planning stage. We got one spot kind of in the middle there that we're trying to work on with the landowners, and we're also going to approach the town about burying it in the road in that area, where it runs up on a hillside there. So
One other thing, we've got management here, constructive criticism. Smart meters. I think it was 3 weeks ago I was up in Maine, the wind was howling. And I said, I wonder what it's like back in Townshend. Got into your app and it looked like my power was fine. So knowing that it was supposed to be windy, I called Green Mountain Power and said, can you check my smart meter? And they said, it looks fine to the box, but maybe one of your circuit breakers are off. Because again, looking at my power on my app, it didn't look like anything was going into the house. So I'm looking at it, an hour later, I look at it again, same thing. I called up Green Mountain Power and asked the person at the desk, what's going on? Well, this is not real time, Bob. So don't worry about it necessarily. It's not that your breaker is flipped, but it's not real time. So again, constructive criticism, let people know that I'm not looking at some real time on the app. It's 8 hours out or whatever, because
No, so our smart meters, in a bigger event, the meters carry a certain time frame with them. And then we also have what's called repeaters out on the line. They have a 24-hour battery in them. So after a certain amount of time during a large event, yes, they may stop functioning. In a day-to-day thing where you may only be out for 2 hours, they do report in that they're out, and there's also an engine inside of our outage management system that will show us who's out, even outside of the smart meters. So I'm not sure who you spoke with, but we all have the ability to ping from our desks, and so that's interesting feedback. You know what time of day? Do you know?
I have it written down, not with me.
Okay.
And it was the 800 number, and again, I was told that it wasn't real time, and they did ping it, and the first person I talked to said, it looks like your breaker is flipped. So I'm thinking, uh-oh, no one is gonna be there to put it back. And then, like I said, an hour later, I checked again. So the point that I'm trying to make is, maybe we need to get information out to the customer, what's actually going on with the so-called smart meters. And again, when I have an outage, sometimes I call and they say, we didn't know your power was out. So the smart meter must have some kind of delay in there, whether it's 10 minutes or 3 hours, I can't tell you.
Yeah, so a lot of times what happens on the map when I'm looking at it during a storm event is like, there'll be like almost like a brown color around all the meters. And that's the meters talking back to the gatekeeper, which sends out the signal to me, whether you called or not. If somebody called in your neighborhood, then I get a blue ring around that, and I'll know, hey, somebody called in this area, they're definitely without power. As far as when we restore it, like Mike said, there's times where the gatekeeper itself was down and it takes it a little while to, so that might be that delay that they might have seen. But in most cases, like I can ping your meter right after we turn it back on and it says that you have 12240 going into the house.
But my app doesn't give me that instant information that you have.
No. And another thing too is sometimes what'll happen during a bigger event, and even that wind event, you know, we were getting 50-mile-an-hour winds, but what'll happen is if the main line goes out and now everyone beyond that line is out, and then another tree falls on your individual line while that's out, what'll happen is because we didn't know about that before the main line went out, it will tell us when we first close it in that everyone on the main line is back on. Well, what happens is because of all the gatekeeper issues, it's not an instant, oh, this customer's still out. We're actually working pretty hard to figure out how to get it to tell us that. But depending on the timing of the outages, it can lead to something like that. And that's why we actually send the text. And if you're still out, just respond. That's why we do that, so that if something like that happens, it let us know right off.
Got it, got it.
Okay, let's, why don't we move forward here? Are there any other questions for?
I have one question.
Correct.
I just wanna quickly go back to the critical care customer list. So we didn't have anyone come before the board per se, but I think someone had reached out to our town clerk. They said that they were somewhat of a sitting duck during the storm. They were elderly. And so I know for myself and Rob here, we've both, even as just residents of the town separate from the board, have been somewhat looking into compiling lists of emergency resources for people that live in the town that might be disabled or need some help. How does someone that might not be on that list get on that list?
Yeah, so they call into the call center.
Okay.
And I think we've heard that same thing from actually quite a few towns, and Vermont Emergency Management is working on a CARES list that does exactly what you're talking about. So my recommendation would be to reach out to them. The critical care list is really for folks that are on the medical equipment that requires electricity. And so we still talk to plenty of elderly people or people that may not be on that list but just got home from the hospital and they're on certain devices they wouldn't have known to get on that list. So those calls get escalated to the critical care team during that time. But if anybody wants to get on the critical care list and wants that sort of proactive outreach because of the type of equipment they're on, they just call our call center.
Okay.
And can sign up that way.
And you don't have some kind of piece of literature or something we could keep with our town clerk, just in case someone, you know, contacted her and she was able to point them in a direction?
Yeah, what I would say is your town clerk definitely has my contact information, and I'm happy to connect them to that. We don't have like a definition
Yeah.
of a critical
Yeah.
care.
Well, it was news to
but-
me. I've never
yeah.
heard of it before, and
Yeah.
I'm sure that maybe,
Sure.
you know, there's people out there that haven't
Yeah.
either that might need it, so.
Yes, absolutely.
We've had a lot of local emergency planners ask us for that list. And did you just mention that? And
No.
because of HIPAA laws, we actually can't give that out. But I do think the state has CARES or something
Yes,
like
it's-
that.
There
where-
is.
Where there is
Yeah.
something that you could access yourself through
And
that
that's
list.
more what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
somebody
it's
that's
more
seeking
vulnerable,
information.
because I think that's what you're getting at, is it's like the vulnerable populations that
Yeah.
don't have family and are
Right.
elderly and maybe or, you know, they're on machines, but not sort of life-saving machines and those kinds of things. So.
Yeah, I think about these things a lot because my husband works at the post office and they deal with like if the mail doesn't get out,
Yeah.
medication doesn't get out, you know.
Yeah.
And some people, if the power's not on,
Yep,
they don't,
same,
you know.
absolutely. But, right, things like refrigerating medication or
Right.
those kinds of things, so.
We have access to the CARES list.
Oh, okay.
All I have to do is ask for it
Okay.
when the incident happens. It has
Right,
to
and
be
something
an
that
incident.
came up with the library was that people were looking for information, didn't necessarily wanna ask if it was posted somewhere, if there was a phone number on a bulletin board, things like that.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
just what I'm asking
that
about.
CARES list, just so you know, is rooted around specific people. It's
Okay.
not available to the general public.
Right.
And it has to be asked for at the time of an incident. You can't keep it.
Yeah,
It's gotta go away.
that makes sense.
Roberta.
I just wanted
Laura.
to mention that, I think that you guys did a great job, and it's must be tough kind of being the punching bag, because it certainly wasn't your fault. And, the fact that you're talking about the storms increasing, is kind of like a good point that I've been trying to make to folks, in general. And there is an emergency. I think that as much as you're trying to do what you can, the towns ultimately also have to be able to help people during times of emergency. And I know during Irene, it was really tough for people around here, and there was some kind of an emergency plan put in place, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be accessible to the public. So, and thank you so much for following up on that and trying to find people, you know, getting that care list together. So I just want to reiterate the fact that we need a way for people, like a way for the town itself has to take some responsibility for caring for their people during emergencies. And if you guys have any resources
Yeah.
that would help the town
Yeah.
do that, that would be wonderful.
Yeah,
I'm thinking the app, so
Yeah.
to your question, there's a GMP app, I think it might be what you're talking about. So we've had a lot of local emergency planners ask us, how can we get information in a long duration event about where customers might still be out? And on the GMP app, the app and the website, the app seems to work a little better for local emergency planners. You can actually log into there. Now, the first couple days, it would have shown all of Townsend out probably, so it's not gonna do you a lot of good there. But as we, in an extreme event like this, where we get out to day 3 or 4, and you wanna know where the people are that are still out to check in on them, things like that, that GMP app has a map on there that actually shows where those areas are, right down to the street level. So another thing to think about for the local emergency planners, again, we don't talk about that all the time because not all actors are looking for the right things, but that is something that I've had feedback from local emergency planners that has worked wonders for them to be able to go out and check on people.
I would say too, it is very much appreciated, especially as we're talking to people that are vulnerable or, you know, critical care customers, when warming shelters are set up, because, you know, the town hall may have a generator or something like that. Even if it's just for a few hours, that's something we learned during this tour we've been going around, is that there's a difference between a shelter and a warming center and a shelter, something that's open overnight. But just a place where somebody who might be on oxygen can come and actually plug in their battery to get that back up through the night. Those are really critical resources for people. And I know it's not always easy for them to get out of their house, but that, and then being able to, so many towns, to be able to call the emergency manager and to say, we have this customer, she's in a very bad situation and I need you to go check on her. Because I'm not in Rutland, I'm actually in Colchester, but I'm not in Townsend when these things are happening. And, you know, our entire team is very much worried about these folks and making sure that they're okay during this time.
Does Green Mountain Power have any, I know this is really a stretch, like ways to help towns get like a backup generator or a warming shelter or something like that?
So what I would say to that is that we have the large battery energy storage that we're working with various towns to get backup in that way. As far as like a fossil fuel generator, that's not something that we would coordinate, but we would for an electric battery. Yes, and if that's something that the town.
Didn't you say those are limited though? right now with limited access?
So the power walls are limited, the ones that are in people's homes, but we're hoping that those will soon not be limited. But if you're thinking of larger battery energy storage, that's definitely something that we would want to help with.
And there are ARPA funds
Yes.
available to towns as well that you can look for grants and things like that.
We won't get into that.
Yeah.
I also have a question,
Yeah.
Jason Fiesel. Yeah, you keep on, I've heard more than once mention of like call, text, or app. We didn't have access to any of that,
Yeah.
nor did our elderly neighbors.
Yeah.
So we just had to step up and take care of our neighbors, along with being completely disconnected from everything. We couldn't have found out. We couldn't have left our neighborhood to get to anywhere to test. And yes, these Tesla walls and long batteries are grand, but is there a solution for communication?
I think a lot of times the communication coming through the radios, especially with town crews.
Well,
is-
I'm not there tapping an SOS either.
Yeah,
Right, yeah, but I'm not saying your radios, but the town driving around and noticing that, hey, these roads are closed, and they're radioing in to whoever their dispatcher is, or the road foreman, and letting them know, and then.
I saw one
road
vehicle
foreman-
in 3 days.
Yeah.
I think you're thinking more of just the phone system.
Just
where-
any kind of communication, I mean, whether it's like, hey, with every 10 miles or every 5 miles, let's set, you know, like a hub that's on a, like, even if it's on Starlink or something, it's not gonna drop.
Yeah, so we are talking to some of the community, the new fiber lines, don't always work like the older copper lines did when the power's out. So they are looking at what they can do for generation and storage, along with the fact that we're working on resiliency for our lines to be able to withstand these storms better. But that is a tougher one, that we are aware of, the phone companies are aware of, the communication companies are aware of, and you know, they'll let us know where they have generators and things too, that are at risk. So we work closely with them. I don't have an exact.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a
Yeah.
hand-in-hand, like,
Yeah.
situation, but I didn't know if there was anything set that you guys had thought ahead, hey, how do we get communication?
So I think what we're thinking, rather than that, at least short term, and especially, you know, Grafton's another great place with zero cell service, and so it doesn't matter how much we're communicating because no one's getting those communications, and that's where we really want to rely on this link with the town officials and the people in the town to be able to post information in some sort of way, or get the information out, because yeah, I mean, I don't know that we'll be able to solve
Right.
that cell communication.
Well, it was more,
Yeah. Yeah,
the concern comes with our neighbor across the way, very elderly,
yeah,
and we couldn't have called for any emergency
Oh, no, I
services
know.
if anything had happened.
yeah,
And so,
yes,
it was a little, like, okay.
yeah, I know,
The state has given us information, and some of our resiliency zones are based on that criteria, where they've run fiber and the phone lines aren't, again, they're amazing communication lines, right? They just don't carry the signal like the older lines did during a power outage. So some of the resiliency zones we're working on had that as a criteria, so certainly that's something we'll continue to look at.
Yeah.
And, you know, in closing, I do want to say we've heard your feedback. Where I push back, I just don't want to let something get out there that actually is not within what we can do with OSHA and safety zones and things like that. So I've absolutely heard your feedback. We want to get to where we're getting to every one of these calls you talked about sooner. That's the goal. It's why we have after actions. So I appreciate the feedback, and hopefully we can make those connections where the road crews and the local crews just work together. And, you know, the next, hopefully it's not for a long time, but where we get that amount of damage, but the next time is a different experience for everybody.
My concern comes from your tree crew. Your linesmen do the best job that they can do. Green Mountain Power, you guys, I mean, I don't know the corporate part, but I know the guys boots on the ground, A1. Your tree guys are terrible, as I said. They need to be checked out from the top to the bottom, front to the back,
We heard
the whole
you
9 yards.
loud and clear.
Good.
Got it.
Well, I'm gonna keep saying it until I see some action, because squeaky wheel gets grease. And that's why they're here, is because there was a squeaky wheel.
We've actually visited 10 towns. We're visiting.
Yeah.
all
Because
the
there was probably more than one squeaky wheel.
Hold on, please. Steve?
Yes, Sherwood, I would just like to say,
Go ahead.
I agree with Rob 100%. This is not against Green Mountain Power. It's against the tree crews. But I want to emphasize to everybody in that room, when you talk about apps, you're talking about going online, you have to remember a good majority of Townsend does not have cell service or internet access. And during this storm, my section of town was out of power and telephone for 5 days. My outrage is not for having no power. My outrage is for not having a landline. It took consolidated 3.5 days to put a generator at the bottom of Deer Ridge so we could have landline service. That's the true outrage. When you don't have cell service, you don't have internet, and you don't have landline, you're screwed.
And that also includes the garage, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So the problem that we have in this town is that the majority of lines that aren't on fiber are on voice over IP. The power's gone, they're gone. So, and it's just the way things are going. And we have one cell tower right up there, and it doesn't cover the whole town. What?
That was the road fault, by the way, in case you remember that.
I was getting there.
Okay. Sorry. The town garage, town hall, we all ought to have emergency generators.
Longer discussion. We'll pass on that for right now. I'm gonna give you my phone number and information. I've got it right here written down for you. And we'll touch base with the highway foreman to see what we can do as far as communicating. Okay?
Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah, appreciate the time.
That's great.
Thank you. Whoops, sorry about that. Thank you.
Just close all that first.
No. I'll take Rob's card. Oh,
Okay. Do we want to take like 5 while they get their stuff together?
yes.
Okay. We're going to take 5 while they get their stuff together, and then we'll pick it back up. Okay, we're returning to the meeting at 7, close enough, 7:30. We have 2 changes, at least in order, that are on the warning here. I'd like to move the the reports up, at least the highway report, to get Steve taken care of, and that'll be next. And then the Stone Arch Bridge with Historical Society after that, because we have people to speak from that. Are there any objections?
No.
Okay. Steve, are you there?
Yes, am I on the air?
You are on the air.
Okay, as I'm sure most of you know, we've been having issues with the garbage truck for quite some time now. Howard Nystrom has been working on it, and he's finally given up on it. So my only option I have right now is to have the vehicle towed to ATG, who is a Sterling dealer. Will only work on the truck if it's on site. They will not come to the garage and work on it off site. So with the board's permission, I would like to have DJs tow the rubbish truck to ATG to have repairs made.
Do you have an idea of what it will cost to have it towed there?
I'm sorry, Rob, go ahead.
Do you have an idea of what it will cost to have it towed there?
Hello?
Are you still, Steve, can you hear me?
I'm trying to unmute. I've been
Steve.
Are you there?
Yeah?
All right, Rob, I didn't hear your question.
Do you have an estimate of how much it will cost to have the truck towed to ATG?
About $800.
Okay. Yes, we can put that to a motion.
I'd make a motion to hire ATG to move the Sterling trash truck to their facility and cap the cost to $800.
Rob, I think it's DJs.
That would be DJs.
DJs.
Yeah.
DJs, okay, DJs, sorry. I amend my motion for DJs.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. In this case, we've got a motion and seconded to spend up to $800 to move the trash truck to ATG.
No,
By
DJs.
DJs. Move the trash truck with DJs, and where's it going, Steve?
ATG Westminster.
Okay. To be moved to ATGs. All those in favor? Aye. 5-0. Go ahead, Steve.
All right, grading continues on a daily basis. Last week we had a culvert, a metal culvert that was rusted on the bottom, collapsed and failed on State Forest Road in the vicinity of Germain's house, causing water to run across the road. We changed that culvert, and hopefully still in your attendance is an interview for tonight. Individual by the name of Skylar, I hope he's still there.
He is.
Okay, very well. So you have an interview tonight for a potential candidate for the highway department.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Does anybody else got a question for Steve? All right. Okay, Steve. Connie will let you know when we're done.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thanks.
All right. Now we'll move on to 9B under new business to speak with the Historical Society and the group that's been working on the Stone Arch Bridge project.
Should we, I think we have to do A first,
A?
before you can do B.
All right, well, let's combine the two of them, A and B, and we'll solve that all together. All right, so we have Lee Petty and we have Charles Marchant, ready to go. What do you need?
We're here to support the committee, composed of both representatives from the town and the Historical Society that worked hard, mainly Connie, to get this RFP for the selection of the team or the procurement of the team to repair the West Townsend Stone Arch Bridge.
Go ahead, Connie.
I think in order for us as a select board to discuss and approve the RFP, the first thing we have to do is, embedded in the RFP, is a requirement to have a standard contract when working on Townsend's roads and bridges. And so the first thing to review and decide whether or not we're going to adopt is the highway maintenance and repair contract. And I can explain a little bit on that. That it should be located before your RFP.
Appendix D.
It's called Appendix D, and it is before the big RFP.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say real quick what it's about. Lee and I, having put together the draft of the RFP, with Steve's initial draft, the examples of RFPs include, particularly when you're dealing with a federal grant or a state involvement, they have standard contracts for municipalities to enter into with contractors. So we looked towards VLCT for a standard contract for Townsend to enter into with a construction company. So that contract that you're looking at, Appendix B, is a modified version of the VLCT standard highway maintenance and repair contract. So it is sort of specific to this particular project, but it's based on the VLCT's standard contract. It is a contract that looks out for the town. If you read it, it's all about protecting the town's interest in it. It's not the final contract, it would be part of the final contract with the contractors.
Any questions?
This is this document, Appendix D that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Alright.
And it's Appendix D because it's also embedded in the RFP. It's one of the appendixes for the RFP. But the select board would have to decide to sign it so that it can go into the RFP.
And there's no, the RFP will have to go out before
It's scheduled to
before
go-
our next meeting.
Yes, it's scheduled to go out on May 1st. We hope that it doesn't get delayed.
Would have been nice to have a couple minutes to read it over.
Well, I did send it out by email on Friday, but it's a very good point about how a select board gets to read all these documents as the meeting's starting.
Well, take what time you need to glance through it.
See about June
Was this
1st.
from the state, from the,
I didn't say read the whole.
you got a representative from the state who's been helping, is that where you got this info from?
Yes, so Rob asked a good question, which is, where did it come from? In the original draft of the RFP, we based it on the state preservation's Bennington Monument RFP as for structure of the RFP. Steve put together a really good initial draft. We then have been getting help from the Director of Preservation, Jamie Duggan, from the state of Vermont, and he helped us modify that contract, standard road contract, to more accurately reflect this particular project.
And that guy is the one that has the experience of stonework?
No,
Or is
he
that the
is,
other one?
he's the Director of Preservation for the state of Vermont. So he knows, and I think he actually was a dry mason at some point in his career, but
Yeah.
right now he's the Director of the state's
He's
preservation.
also in charge of all the state's historic monuments and buildings.
Yeah.
I just remember, I think it was him from the first meeting that I went to.
Yes.
And he was saying that he had experience
Yes.
with stone.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, the RFP that we're going to potentially put out is modeled off of RFPs of similar project with additional modifications specific to this type of.
The RFP is modeled after a state preservation RFP. It was not necessarily a similar project, but it was modeled after a preservation RFP that has been modified. We spent 2 weeks basically modifying to reflect the Stone Arch project.
Got it.
And then after this is completed, then it goes out to bids.
If you all adopt the RFP and if the National Park Service does not have any objections to any parts of it, then it's due to be issued to potential bidders on May 1st,
Okay, pretty soon.
pretty soon.
Is there any sense of who may bid on it?
Well, it is interesting that Lee and Charlie could probably speak to this better than I, but the pool of certified masons that are qualified to do this work and to oversee this project is not huge. It's larger than you would think it is, but it's not huge. And the state preservation, the Director of State Preservation, Jamie Duggan, knows all those networks. And so the plan is to put it out to the entire state of Vermont, because the state has a bid board that all contractors can look at, and put it out to some other listservs as well of stonemasons, certified stonemasons.
Lee and Charlie, do you feel like you're gonna have 3 bidders on this project? At least 3
We're
bidders?
hoping for it. The National Park Service would like that.
Yeah.
Perhaps more. It's a unique project, and people that are in that line of work perhaps like the challenge of the unique project, so they're likely to bid on it.
I would like to see as many, multiple bids, if not,
Well, that's what
2
we're
or
hoping
3,
for. I think,
however.
we're working with this, Connie and I are working with the Stone, and Charlie with Stone Trust, who has a huge network. We filled out an application so they can get out to their network. I didn't bring the names of the other stonemason networks, but we have 2 other ones, I believe.
There's some from down south.
It'll be on the electronic billboard for
Yeah.
the state of Vermont. And we will advertise, we're required pretty much to advertise locally.
There was also a lot of work put into the schedule, the putting out the RFP itself, and then making sure people had enough time to ask questions to make sure that the scope of the project was appropriate for them to get their questions answered. We really didn't want to rush the timeline, but there is a timeline, so I think that a lot of that was thought about so that we could get the most bidders that possible.
It's very important to the Historic Preservation Fund and the National Park Service and Department of Interior, who have funding involved in this project, that it be totally open to bid, and that, we're bound, you're bound as a town putting it out, to get it to as many people as possible. That's one of their qualifications, and that's one of the things they'll be looking at as they review it, and it's under review right now by them. They have to approve it.
So we're looking for a motion to accept. I'd make a motion to accept any bids on the restoration of the Townsend.
No.
Yeah,
It's,
the motion would
Adopting
be
the contract.
that we authorize this first.
Well, all right. I would make a motion to accept contract for the highway maintenance repair on the West Townsend Stone Arch Bridge.
Is there a second? There is a second. Is there any further discussion?
Does anyone object to me voting on any of this?
No, because we assigned you to do what you're doing.
Okay, good.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. So, 5-0, and the first part of that passes. So we'll get we need to sign off on that last page, right? Let's start the signing right there. Connie, why don't you sign off on the thing as the witness?
Okay.
That'll make it just as easy. We'll get that out of the way, and then we'll move on to the RFP itself. Send it to Connie. There's the original on that.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, that takes care of that. Now, the next thing we have is this document here, and this is the RFP. And it is rather lengthy. This just sets about what we're expecting the end result to be and identifies the areas and where. So the RFP is asking for people to submit bids, and then we'll have a chance to review those sealed bids before anything moves forward from that. Again, we're on a time crunch here, so take what time you need. There's at least 2 of us here that have been through most of this more than once, so. And I've read through this thing myself.
excuse me, are you gonna be reading for just a minute? They gave me the wrong charger for my computer, and I gotta run out to my car and see if I have them on.
Yes.
I'll be right back.
Charlie? You don't have to tell me how much, but how is the fundraising going for this project? We don't need details, just, is it positive, is it negative?
Positive.
Okay, good.
Positive. But we're not there.
Yeah.
But it's positive.
Well, that's what I wanted to hear, I didn't want to hear a number.
We all
because-
understand this isn't going forward unless the funds are in place.
Well, if it didn't, do now.
Pardon me?
I said if that was a question, it isn't anymore.
Right.
Okay.
Still learning all the family trees. I'm still learning the family trees. So I was just looking at Lucier's obituary
Mm-hmm.
and deck record. Anyways, just, you know, putting people together, families.
And if you went one tier deeper, it really gets deep.
Say, how?
So they're not.
Teresa said it is. Dan knows here, we've got Riley.
So the reason that Deb and Greg come to basketball games is because of Umbrella. Get it? I mean, Sylvia. By Umbrella, I mean Sylvia.
It's not being recorded.
So what?
We got-
It's being recorded.
It is being
It's
recorded?
being recorded just on the camera, it's not on
Make
the
a
tape.
good
Oh,
presentation.
no,
All right.
okay.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't clarify.
Okay.
You're fine.
Is everybody set?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, under B, we're looking for a motion. Thank you. We're looking for a motion for, to accept the RFP for the Stone Arch Bridge project.
I would move to approve the RFP.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, do we have any further discussion on it? Okay, motion's been made and seconded to accept the RFP that Connie, Steve, the rest of the crew have been involved in for the last several months. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. 5-0.
Thank you for your hard work. It's really a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks to all- everyone
you
from the
guys.
town, and to Jamie Duggan. from
Thank
the
Connie
state.
and Steve for their hard work,
It
and
was a
Katie.
Shared
Lee, and
effort.
Lee especially.
Shared effort.
Okay, let's move on to correspondence, back up to where we're on track with. We had a letter from Ned Phoenix about some blow-away trash from the recycling bins crossing over onto his property. I talked to Steve and he's gonna get somebody out there to take care of it. Get it picked up. He also wanted a chicken wire fence, and I mean, it's up to you guys if you want to if you want to allow a chicken wire fence. I'm not in favor of it. I think if we're gonna put a fence out there, it needs to be something like a stockade fence, those orange, what are they?
Snow fence?
Snow fence or barrier fence, so that at least if somebody's walking through there, they're not gonna get hung up in the chicken wire. But that's something that I've communicated to Steve about. If there's any other suggestions, send them his way as well. Warrants. Katie, you found a problem with the issue in the warrants?
Rob found a problem with number 2 payroll taxes.
Okay.
So I'll just let you know what that
Yep.
is when I go through. I'd like to make a motion to pay the warrants. Number 1, payroll in the amount of $10,251.68. Number 2, payroll taxes. It had read $4,893.36. The correction should be payroll taxes $4,366.72.
Recording in progress.
Number 3, general fund in the amount of $17,304.11. Number 4, highway in the amount of $14,056.46. Number 5, highway in the amount of $25.04. I guess we're gonna switch these numbers because there's 2 number 5s here. So number 6, highway equipment in the amount of $2,381.81. And number 7, highway equipment in the amount of $1,510.06 with a modified amount of $49,895.88. It had read $50,422.52 and we're changing that to $49,895.88.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm just curious, was it just like an editing error of?
Yes.
Okay, great, it wasn't.
It was just transferring a number to a page.
Yep, great,
That was all.
cool.
Can he hear now?
Yes.
That was my only question.
Okay. Next up, we've got the treasurer's report.
Oh, we didn't.
Oh, yeah, we ought to probably do that. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, 5-0. Warrants are done. Okay, highway's done. Treasurer's report. We have in the actual fund balance $285,338. True fund balance out of the accounts, and the bank in the municipal investment fund is $1,216,586.72, and then the checking account, this will be a shock to you, $24,692.33. I've been here 2.5 years and I've never seen it less than $30,000. Okay, so that's that. The counter money for the town clerk, she has deposited $1,240.75. Okay. And I just want to make a comment that it wasn't pointed out, but there's going to actually be 2 executive session topics at the end instead of just the one. Okay, now we can go into old business. And you folks are here about the dance studio.
Yes.
You have the floor.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brigitte Bejo. Thank you so much for your time this evening. So I am proposing to you that I rent out the upstairs space as a dance studio. I do have a list of like the times, the scheduling that I was thinking. So at first it wouldn't be a full day. So I have that information if you need that. So I wanted to bring that to the community to put on performances upstairs as well because the facility is just gorgeous. And I also wanted to host dances for the community and for our visitors around the area. out on the green or upstairs, and switching the genres of swing, disco, etc. in that area. I also am doing couples wedding packages, and also for any couples that would like to take private dance lessons, that would be also a part of the situation. So I would just like to use the space upstairs because it's very low overhead for a dance studio. I would just need portable mirrors and bars. And then also I would like to sell some ballet or athletic accoutrement, ballet shoes, tights, leotards, warmies that would also be open up to the public for people that also are engaged in yoga or any other sort of activity like that. I have also, I have insurance information that I can get a $1 million liability. So that hopefully will take some ease off of the pressure of that. And I also have a copy of the liability form that I would be giving to all of the students and participants that would be coming in. And I think that it would be a great contribution to the community and to the town hall, because then I can help, because I know that there's an ADA situation with the chairlift with the stairs. And so I'm hoping that I can contribute to the funds of elevating that and using the gorgeous space upstairs.
Good word choice.
Oh,
Pun intended.
thank you. Thank you very much. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them, and hopefully I'll be seeing you all more.
Any questions?
So you said you would bring in like temporary structures, so you wouldn't modify the space at all?
Oh, not at all. Correct. It would just be portable bars and mirrors that I would put on wheels that would be easily moved off to the side.
Yeah, we'd be responsible for moving anything and having it back in place directly how it is. And probably be part of I know there's been mention of having it painted upstairs and kind of doing some of that with clearance from, the board. It would be nice to have that in our budget to make it a better, nicer space.
Right. And utilize the stage. I would, projection, I would love to do 2 performances per year, a winter and a spring, not just for children, for adults as well, because I would like the school to be for all ages, not just pigeonholed to the children's ages.
Do you want to mention that the painted curtains up there are historic?
They're amazing.
They have a beautiful lineage, and if you ever want to ask the Historical Society about them, they are enthusiastic about them.
They are stunning and
Fallen
amazing.
in love with them, and I want to utilize them in such a gorgeous way to allow other people to see the beauty
Yeah, those
of
springs and
upstairs.
backdrops are insane.
And in fact, I would also want to know if I'd be able to use the piano that's up there, and I would pay for it to be tuned and maintained, because it would be lovely to have a live pianist during dance classes. And also live musicians during any of the performances that we put on there, to bring in other, art forms. And it wouldn't be just pigeonholed to classical ballet. We have much connections, in New York City and in Los Angeles. I would be bringing in specialists with circus, also tap dancing, hip hop, jazz, any other sort of, physical performance activity that I could bring in. Oh, and stage magic too.
I think I'm a new person to this select board and area. And something that I've heard from a lot of people is an interest in ways to sort of revitalize and bring the downtown, sort of more, just reawaken us. And I feel like adding dance opportunities into our community is definitely a really cool way to do it. And see that space as being, definitely underutilized. I know there are some
Challenges?
legal conundrums, especially because we have retail space in town that could serve as a similar purpose.
Not really. We've been on the hunt. I mean, if you have it and we can be part of that accessibility,
Yeah, please put me in that
we wanna bring something here. Like,
Yeah.
and if it's not here, then it's gonna be somewhere else. We'd rather bring it here.
Right.
We've been trying to get in touch with Spiro. We've been trying to get in touch with, the church who owns the green. We've really been reaching out, and now it's like starting to get like a little further.
Have you talked to John Evans?
No, we just got
She
a
just
reference.
suggested, I didn't know who he was.
Yeah, because he's got the space, just because, and I'm imagining somebody who has a better understanding than I do, there's complexities in terms of using a town designated space for private business.
Right, but
Anyway.
we could, I mean,
And
there
I
are ways
can't-
around that.
Totally,
It's
I
more
can't,
about getting money into your pocket instead of somebody else's pocket.
Right.
Where we can get a catering license, and then if all liabilities on us, we're just utilizing a space. We can do, multiple liabilities, and it falls off of the town and onto our backs.
Right.
I understand the concern, but as seeing a wasted space and watching it waste even more, that should be more concerning than getting somebody in there and solving the problem. Getting money into the pocket of the board, getting money into the pocket of the building.
Right. No, and I feel like, again, I can't speak, and I'm sure others will,
Yeah,
to
please.
the pieces of renting, etc. Yet, not want, if there's the red tape of this, to me, not wanting to necessarily close the door to the concept of the town having this as an opportunity, including performance space, community opportunities, et cetera, I think that's amazing. I just don't want it to be, how about I open it up to the people who know a little bit about the legality of renting town halls?
Before that, I have to say thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sitting through all of this meeting so far.
No, it's been great. We got
Thank
to
you.
mention our concerns to Green Mountain.
That is good.
And we are, we are
Enthusiasm.
residents
And
of
we are part of-
Townshend, and we want to be
Yes.
part of the
I
community.
think it would
we
be
weren't-
cool,
we
two
aren't-
birds, one stone, right?
Yeah, we aren't true Vermonters. We weren't
Yeah,
born
we
on the
weren't right
table we
here.
built.
I wasn't either, so.
And we understand that, and we are, still outside, but we are community members, and
Yes.
we are,
Like, top.
we want to make
Yeah.
things better.
Yeah, at
And
the
we
very
have the
least,
energy.
it's a bigger conversation where we can find out what you need and what we need, and maybe we can come together and make this an ADA accessible building again.
Yes.
I think that if that's our goal,
Yes.
we can find a way to do that, personally, in my naive opinion.
No,
But it's a
I
conversation
don't
that
think
we
it's
should
naive
have.
at all. I think that there is opportunity, and if it's not like state, there's federal, there's a lot of opportunity for ADA, yes.
And I do want to offer class, like it's called an adaptive class, where there are people that have disabilities or, that
Yeah.
can partake, that I want them to be a part of this
Yeah.
community. So that is something that is important to me.
It would be a big deal to a lot of people who live here, everybody who lives here.
Yeah, and even if they can't, just sitting in a chair and being able to swing along and holding up a square dance, or swing night once a month, or,
Yeah.
disco night, or let's kick it old school, let's bring in a waltz and just.
Because we've spoken to Grafton, and they used to have like town dances, and they really enjoyed that, and they seem to miss that. I think this is another opportunity, like bring people together, the more, and if the retail sounds a little scary, then we could partner up as a business partner, because there are moments that this is used as, there are retail moments here,
Sure, yeah.
And
We could use more.
if there's a way to profit share with that, yes, awesome, great, we're into that. Like, if it means, creating whatever.
I mean, at ballet schools, they do have a snack table, so I could be running a little snack shop upstairs with my, just saying, I know we need a little cafe over here.
Sure, yeah. But I am so willing to work with you guys on this, although there are things I'm not even thinking of, so I'll turn it to people with more experience.
I would look over to Mr. Safety, Bob DeServo, and Mr. Andy Snelling. What do you guys think?
Sure.
I love the enthusiasm.
Great, yeah, we're here.
Like, maybe something
Tomorrow we're taking the EMT courses, so we
Yeah,
can.
down in Athens.
In Athens, so we can be first responders out here, and, you know, we wanna do everything we can, including bringing more business.
More business.
The fire department has an open recruiting event on May 13th.
Great.
Okay.
If you're interested in volunteering.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty low
Go
population.
ahead, Connor.
So at the last select board meeting, Sherwood asked that we look into some, the legalities of a, tenant-landlord relationship. So he asked that I contact the
Vermont League of Cities and Counties.
Yeah, VLCT. So in your packet is a template for a reoccurring use of the town hall. So there is, I think, some ability to do this without having it necessarily be a formal tenant-landlord relationship, because the nature of a town hall is the use of it. You can have single-use application, you can have reoccurring use application. So Sherwood had me put that in the packet to answer some questions.
I do have a question.
Yes.
The school, would that be in front of the ADA compliance, or how do we expect that to?
Well, it would be, the school would open right away, and as time progressed, if we could be part of making it ADA accessible, which would be fantastic, because then we, Brigitte, could open up to she has some adaptive classes and things, which is people with physical disabilities, to just move and dance and stretch. So in time, but to get to, the answer is it would start without the.
And I will be applying for grants too, and if I do get money from these grants, I would be putting the majority of that towards the ADA, because helping the community, and it will be helping students.
Because upstairs doesn't have accessibility in terms of someone who's not got complete mobility.
Right.
You've got issues about life safety in terms of the size of the dance, whether it's 20 people or 200 people. I mean, there are other issues that go along with this.
When you say about the number of people, are you talking about the wear and tear on the floor, or
No.
the fire code, like
Fire code.
Oh, well, I would have, I
Yeah,
would definitely meet with a fire inspector. I would be following all the protocol. It's like Green Mountain says, safety is a top priority, and I wouldn't want anybody to be injured, and I wouldn't want to be breaking any fire regulations, especially in the town hall. So I would keep track of that. If he tells me I cannot have any more than 25 people up there at a time, that's what I get.
Okay, just thinking out loud now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
And it wouldn't be that much wear and tear. I wouldn't be doing much to the floors. So that was part of the question as well.
Well, the situation, there's a couple of situations that I see. One of them is, and I think you've already answered it, the retail space, because we can't be responsible for selling, have anything to do with that, even leaving the stuff up there, because people come in and out of this building all the
Correct.
time.
We realize that it's not behind a locked door.
Yeah, and well, actually, there's another one. Those screens upstairs are extremely fragile, so we'd have to have some guarantee that nobody's gonna be playing with them, touching with them,
Sure.
hide and go seek. Well, kids are kids,
Yeah.
sometimes even adults are kids. But we also need to be able to open this place up to members of the town, like we've got permit requests right now for, one of them's a 100-year birthday party, and another one is, the other one I think is out on the common. But as it's a public entity, the municipal building is a public building, we have to be able to allow fair use of it under certain circumstances.
Absolutely, and I would want that to be in the lease agreement, as in town hall, this is your building, you would get precedence.
Well, actually, if you live here, it's your building.
But
I mean, but the town owns it, so if you would need it for a specific, I would work with the schedule. There would be
So
no
let me-
pushback.
You would be open to adding something into the agreement that, like, the town hall events could take precedent without impacting your, like, rent rate? You know, like,
Yes.
if
I mean-
all of us, I don't know.
So, but for the two concerns initially, any of the retail stuff would be in locked boxes and on rollers. So it basically slides to the side and it comes out and displays during classes. It also gives a screen to kind of block, you know, the area that would be utilized for the dance itself. And concerns with the scrims and the backdrops, they're fantastic. They're a piece of art. They should be insured even through her company as a piece of art. And I think that children are as intelligent as adults, and when told, you know, hey, this is something that's very special, you know, do not go near it.
Yeah.
Like, they understand.
And one of the basis of ballet is discipline. So you're disciplined. Do not touch the windows. That's the way, you know, it's very strict. I'm not going to be throwing birthday parties up there and kind of letting it be a free-for-all. The classes are going to be very structured, and children, like let's say from 7 to 11, they're not going to be there for 4 hours at a time to kind of get a little bit in that antsy pants. It's going to be very structured, hour class. You're learning something, it's in, it's out. When you're finished with your class, you're escorted out. I would never even leave one of the students unattended in that space without myself or another instructor that would be in the room to observe.
How much time per day are you thinking?
Well, right now at the beginning of I have a printed proposal too, if anybody would like to take
I've got a
it.
copy.
The
Here's the schedule, I
for
can,
right now, because I'm still kind of getting the vibes of Vermont, I feel Monday and Tuesday are more like a Sunday. So things really start to pick up Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So to start off and bring in the clientele, I would say Wednesday through Friday, a 3 o'clock to a 6 o'clock sort of time. And I have the breakdown of the schedule and the description of the classes on there as well. I also have a copy of the liability, like I said before, of every student that would come to take class would
Recording in progress.
sign that liability. And then also, there would be a Saturday class, which I think that I had on that schedule from 12 to 3. But I would also like to be able, in the lease, have a little bit of wiggle room that if I do get a wedding package and they can't make it until a Sunday because they might be coming from Connecticut, Massachusetts, or New York, and they're only here a certain amount of time. So I put in a request of like, would it be okay if I utilize the studio? And it's 90 minutes is usually what a dance package is for a couple. So it'd be no longer, and again, I would be completely transparent with that. I would be very communicative of, you know, I have this package coming up, is this space available? So that would be the schedule. Wednesday through Friday, or Wednesday through Saturday, about a 3-hour, possibly 4-hour, because I would need to come in a little bit ahead of time just to prepare the room and kind of put my headspace in, give enough time for the pianist to come in. So max, I would say, would be 4 hours a day.
I'm curious about building employees and sound and just like the impact on you guys.
yes, that is a concern.
You know,
And-
because you still have like 3, in terms of the workday, like, and opinions of people, like they're not in the room, you know, but considering what the
So do the
impact.
sound of giggling girls and classical music bother you?
I'm just thinking, no, I'm more thinking of, no, that's not the sound I'm thinking of.
Oh, that's what will rain through the building, just so you know.
I'm thinking speaking of my experience of living in an old
Yes.
New England building on the first floor, and when my upstairs tenants' 2 children are running around,
It's like that here.
they're giggling and it's amazing and it's cheerful, but I don't hear the giggles. I just hear
I
the
think
running.
a little life to the building doesn't hurt anything.
Well, and I'm not saying it does. I'm saying I am not a person that works in the building and would want to also get their opinion if that would be something like
No, it's a true concern.
it changes their work environment.
Yeah, of course.
That's all.
Would it bug you, Connie?
It's only really Friday, right? Because it's closed on Thursday.
Right.
And Saturday.
That's true.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
The town hall's closed on Thursday.
Thursdays. Yeah.
Thursdays, so we would schedule around that, yeah. And,
Well, it would be, I mean, they wouldn't, the office wouldn't be open, that the sound of, because I'm thinking of like, yes, I know ballet is like not a ton of like stomping.
They don't do it in combat boots.
Right. Yet.
But I'm sure, you know, a dozen children upstairs pitter pattering will make some noise.
Right, especially if I'm getting girls that are in point shoes. There is
Yeah.
gonna be a tad bit of like a.
Right, and that's.
Or tap dance.
Shall I go upstairs and dance around with
Again, I'm just raising it to the you know, the people
No, it's a great
that
point.
it's
It
their
really
working
is.
environment and adding their voice of
And
consideration.
we can add a pair of beats for every, that's to the,
Oh.
to,
Did I tell you I work
to
at
the
the town
budget.
hall?
And again, I wanna have an open line with the ladies down in the office of like, you're playing it a little, you know, too loud or, you know.
Mhm.
I would wanna know that feedback.
Cool.
I had some questions. I know that it's, you know, your own business, and I don't want to speak too much about prices or anything, which I think are totally great. This is hitting me really close to home because I was a dancer for most of my life and a performance artist through college and movement and everything. If we're thinking, a lot of barriers I know, because I have 4 children, to dance is money. Would you, I'm putting it out there, financial aid, sliding scale, so it's the
Yes.
most accessible for our community, who
One-
seems to be very much middle class and sometimes below, and I think that people would be enthusiastic with the opportunity to have a space to come together to do this type of thing.
For sure,
That-
and
that's
vouchers for
music.
schools
That would be great.
and giving like priority to community. But yeah, I think that like using it like, you know, like.
One of the reasons why I want to get into owning a dance studio is because I feel like everyone should have the opportunity to dance. I understand that classical ballet in particular is a very expensive activity for parents to pay for, but I feel like unfortunately girls and women were denied that because their families couldn't afford that, and I don't want that. I want everyone to be able to enjoy in that art form and learn the aspects, the great qualities of dance. You learn dedication, you learn discipline, you learn all these great things, qualities that I feel like are kind of missing in society today that might, you know, eye contact, being together instead of looking at a screen. So I would never want to deny that from somebody if somebody's not financially able to pay for it. So yes to that answer, your question.
And I do think there has been people in town that have been talking a lot about community and about trying to bring the community back together, especially after COVID. I guess there was a lot of change. I've only been in town for a few years, but before that there was more community dances, community dinners, things like that. And there are people that are trying to find ways to bring that back. So I think that that's something that I've heard from people in the town they would be interested in. So I see that as a plus in the possibility of doing this.
Well, it's, I don't think it's off the table. I think it has some,
There is
we can
time.
do some, I think we need to do some research, we need to have some interactions, we need to, you know, make sure that the people that are in the building doing the work that know what's going on, that are involved in it, and have some say. I mean,
That's all we
I
can ask.
can't imagine that a bunch of kids with ballet shoes are gonna make that much noise. Combat boots, that'd be a little different, but,
We'll save that for the evening class.
but I think the best way we can proceed is just get that information up first. I'd like you to probably draft a contract, put together some kind of a contract, so that some template that we can work from.
Should we give, like, a contract or a lease?
Well, I'd call it a contract. But
Okay,
it
so
can be a
separate
lease.
from, I mean, should we provide the model that you found?
My understanding is that it's a policy for, they have a policy on single use, like the birthday parties and then there's the policy on reoccurring that we would modify, we would take that template and modify it to address this scenario.
And the only thing I'm adding a contract in is because when things are everybody's interested in the project, and then it starts to sour, each party has their fallbacks. It protects you, it protects the town.
Oh, yeah, we don't walk into doors without a contract.
Even the best projects have fallen apart over some foolish, problem. And personally, I would rather see it right on a piece of paper. So if we have an issue that we're not comfortable with or not happy with, I'm sorry, you've run your course.
It would be great to have those concerns laid out for us so we can have the answers to solve any concerns. If you come at us with all the concerns, I mean, as small as they are, like literally like anything that would be a concern, then we can address it.
With the exception of her, I don't think any of us have that much experience with dance. So you're telling me.
Speak for yourself.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
There's a reason Rob's been so quiet.
I think she's got a tutu in your size.
Yeah, I do have
So,
point shoes.
I guess what I'm asking you to do is put together an expectation type of thing, so that we can use it to generate some form of agreement. And then everybody can look at it, have more time to kind of maybe flush out what might be a
Now,
problem.
is that to the minutes of like the decibels during day hours?
Reasonable.
Huh?
I mean, all you gotta do is
yeah.
reasonable. I mean, I doubt you're gonna have a 20-piece orchestra up there beating conga drums, but, just,
On Harry Belafonte side, we will.
at night you can do whatever you want. So I think that's the best way to proceed.
Does it make, I guess given that there's this generic piece, would it be helpful to provide them with this as
Oh, I think so.
like the sort of, at least the scaffolding to then break it into, because it talks about facility, occupancy, events, like it could help you tailor it more specific
No, I think that's a good idea.
instead of like, I mean, it would be overwhelming to,
Yeah. Especially
this
since you don't
also-
know what you're trying to answer.
well, this helps us answer the things that we don't necessarily know to ask.
And then if I could have like a meeting with one of you to go over the first draft, where you could be like this with, okay, just so that when I hand you a final draft instead of having to go back and forth, would be wonderful.
That would be fine. Does anybody else have?
Do you want to set a point person on the board?
I just did.
Oh.
You.
Pointed at you.
You're it.
It's you.
Oh.
You were just not
I don't know anything about dance either.
Do you want to do it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
we could also use a point person for maybe doing a little research.
I'm obviously gonna ask Connie like all my
Yeah.
all the contact questions.
All right,
Doing a
well,
little
let's-
research with other town
Unless
halls.
anybody has an objection to that, let's move forward with it from there, and we'll see what develops.
Can I also suggest touching base with John Evans.
There's also another space that's for sale.
We're interested.
It's down at, used to be the old auction house.
Yeah, we saw
Kit Martin. Now, that's got a lot of open space on the auction floor. I don't know what the condition of the place is in, but he's selling it, so.
He's getting 2.5%.
Oh, yeah.
We'll buy the wooden Indian out front.
Yeah.
The because the rest of the building,
Have you seen it?
yeah.
Have you seen the inside of
We
it?
haven't been inside, we did a little drive
Yeah.
around.
I don't know, I have no idea whether it's any good or not for your purpose, but it's, the only time I was ever in there was 20 years ago, and, you know, it's just full of chairs, and it had pretty open,
And when I look at like some of the wordage and the suggested pieces of like, you know, it talks about the question of whether the town hall should be used in place of other retail businesses. And it like, the auction house like isn't necessarily equipped to be a dance studio in the sense of like, that's not competition with this space,
Right.
you know, whereas the space over there could, and again, I don't know yet. I will say in suggesting that it's simply based off of this like
Well, the precedence of having a stage
well,
over
and so
is,
right, and so my point being is in saying that and suggesting that it is not to say that you would not be regularly utilizing this space in a greater, bigger way with our community. I'm simply looking at like, you know, this is the Vermont legal piece of like,
exactly.
which people here really like to make sure that we follow what is said.
But that would set the
Right.
precedence is the fact that there's a stage there over any commercial building in southern Vermont.
And the problem that I'm running into with finding a commercial space is the flooring.
Right.
Flooring is so important to me. I cannot have students dance on cement. So, and the building, I know which one you're speaking of, my fear is that the base of that is cement. Up here, I don't have to put, raised floors and the
There's
marling.
a rule in place where a town building, a town-owned building can't supersede commercial property.
Right.
so you may have to look into it, you
And
know.
so again, if you're able to say that space doesn't match or doesn't meet it, we have done our due diligence to provide the town people the business instead of taking, because it's also us taking potential business
Help us get this
from.
pizza place. We've been dying to get this thing.
Yeah.
We've been contacting Spiro. We've been doing everything we can to.
Add it to the list of.
Now,
because-
just throwing it out there, is there a way to pass something for occupancy has to, especially in commercial buildings, that occupancy can only be X amount of time before they lose all licensing, et cetera, et cetera.
Or at least signage taken down.
Signage taken down.
We like the way our zoning is currently, and it would get in the way. Possibly, I'm again naive, but
What
that's-
zoning?
But it is a thorn.
There isn't any.
He likes it that way.
It is a thorn in many people's side that there's an empty space.
Yeah, it's ready to go.
With
I
the
mean,
phone
we can turn
number.
it and have that place running within a month.
Go offer 'em money. Exit 3 pizza.
Nope,
Go
many
right
people
in there.
have.
We've
Well, obviously not enough.
No,
Here's why, because he's sitting on a gold mine tax-wise to write that off every single year. He's gonna make more than anyone going in the
If
next
you
couple of years.
incentivize anything, everything's for sale.
Yeah, oh no, everything is for sale, but
Well,
the
he's a
value.
businessman. It's like Spiro understands the value of the old dollar.
All right, we'll give you a number, you go in and talk to Spiro.
If you would
Because I
like
like
me to,
this.
if you would like me to, and I can get things worked out with Spiro, I would expect a handsome.
Yeah.
Finder
I am willing to work in any manner I can for the dollar
Okay,
bill.
I think we've got our marching orders here, or what we're gonna at least try and achieve. And we'll work with her. Go ahead.
Are you also going to be, excuse me, talking to the fire marshal as well about the?
That's another step, a couple of down. We gotta
Okay.
work out whether or not we can even do it, yeah.
Insurance is gonna be the biggest concern, and hopefully we will be so overinsured for a multi-million-dollar, so hopefully
To
that.
make everybody feel comfortable that everything's covered.
and I mean, just based on our population, I don't anticipate initially drawing crowds that would reach the maximum occupancy of upstairs.
There's some challenges to that, though.
No, just in the sense of like, occupancy people, like numbers people, not necessarily like the necessary safety features that have to be in a place, like that part.
Okay, well, like I said, I think we've got a way to start, a way to move forward. Yep, we're ahead. And we need to move on because we're 2 hours more than we generally are. And we still got a list of things to do.
Thank you, Janice.
So, yeah, no problem, no problem. Okay, so the next thing we have is, last time we approved a use permit for Grace Cottage for the Common on May 13th. I was told today that because we did it in two segments, the first one and the second one, the vote didn't count. We've had to bring it forward. I don't agree with it. It is what it is, but it's just as easy to do this as argue with them.
What was the 2 segments?
What happened was, remember, it was called, there was a tie not to move forward with it. So it got put down on the table, and when he came, that would have broken the tie. So I brought it back up for vote at the end of the meeting.
When we talked about the policy
Yeah.
versus, yeah.
Yeah, so, like I said, I don't agree with it, but it's easier in this particular case just to do it again.
What do we need to do?
I am glad that it came back up actually, because I wanted to mention the cleanup responsibilities. Pickle Day last year was the weekend after the fair day. And there were so many little pieces of plastic and things that they probably just looked over because they were dealing with so much.
Okay, we can add that.
But maybe we could at least push them a little bit to really get in there and clean
Well,
up
that's
a
what
little
the
bit.
policy is about. Okay, have you read the policy, the common use policy?
I've
I
not.
brought it up at the last meeting, but you weren't here.
Oh, okay.
There's a
Yeah, I'll
common
take a
use
look at
policy
that.
in that.
Okay, we've explored
Well,
that. We're gonna
it's-
vote on this, it's gonna go away. I'll take
in
care
the
of that,
policy.
yes.
Thanks, Shirley.
Okay, so entertain a motion to allow Grace Cottage Family Help to use the Common on May 13th from 7:30 a.m. as a setup to 8:30, to an 8:30 event. They'll break it down by 11 o'clock. We will add into this thing that they're responsible for picking the place up.
Oh, this is the 5K.
Yeah, no, this is,
Should we
no,
discuss the issue of having the fee waived?
yes, that's,
In
I'm
the
gonna add
motion,
that,
in the
yeah,
motion,
that's what I'm
yeah.
gonna add. And that the fee to be waived. Is there a second?
Are we talking about the May 13th, 2023 event?
Yeah, that we've already voted on and
Yeah.
approved.
I
Oh.
would second that. Fee.
Oh,
Sure, are you making the motion?
yes.
Okay.
And is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of allowing Grace Cottage Family Health to use the Common, fee waived, and clean up their whatever mess they make? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 5-0. Next. Connie, why don't you keep that, unless you've got an original, why don't you keep that? Just add in the language on the bottom of it about cleaning. All right, Leland and Gray, here's the next one. Pumpkin Festival, October 14th, 2023, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Looks like we have all the information that we need for the people that are sponsoring it. This would be another situation where we would be we'd be waiving the fee if it's in all okay with the rest of the board. Do we have a motion?
I moved.
Please state the motion, please.
The motion is to allow Leland and Gray High School to use the Common for their Pumpkin Festival October 14th, 2023.
Are you guys good with me voting on this?
Yep, absolutely.
I just want to be organized.
Your name isn't on the thing.
It's not on the phone, nope.
So we've got the motion, we got a second.
Should we tell them not to screw anything to the gazebo again?
I don't think it was them
This
that
is the
did
first
that.
year that Leland and Gray's
So
take,
is the elementary school.
it was Townsend. Townsend has run it in the past, this is the first year Leland and Gray's gonna take it on.
Is the waiving of the fee in the motion, Connie was just saying?
What's that?
We didn't hear if the waiving.
Waiving of the fee, yeah. So that was moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Do you say anything or not?
Aye.
Aye, okay, thank you. 5-0. I'll get rid of that one. Next one. This one is Richard Jackson, and for those that don't know Mr. Jackson, he worked here in the town hall for a long time in the clerk's office doing recording in the main books. Richard's turning 100 years old. I guess they're having the party for him on October 14th from noon to 7, and they want to use this building. Upstairs specifically. I'd entertain a motion to allow the family to use the building for this party.
So moved.
Second.
And we are waiving the fees on this one as well?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, 5-0.
100 years old, he's gonna make it up the stairs,
He's
Bob.
already done
He
it.
will, I love it.
He's already done
Up
it.
the ends of the stairs.
No ADA required for that man.
What he survived, it's not surprised that he made it all the way up there. All right. Okay, so that one's done. Connie, there you go. Wait a minute. Excellent. Jebra Records. Now this one is for
Dick Lucier.
Dick Lucier's memorial. For those that don't know, Dick Lucier was a select board member. He was on the board of listers, did a lot of work in the town. He died this last year. And they want to have a celebration of life, and they want to use the downstairs and the kitchen.
I'd make a motion to allow the Lucier family to use the town hall, kitchen, out here, anything they need without charging them.
No fee?
No fee.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
I actually do, just in terms of, so part of, anyway, great, good. Got it.
You okay?
All set,
All
yep.
right,
Just realized that I could open it up.
all right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. There's that one. Goes by. All right, so we got through, oh, is this the, yeah, this is the certificate of liability for that one. Okay, next one. We have a second-class liquor license for Vermont Staple Goods, or as they're more commonly known, Riverbend Market.
Is that just beer?
Huh?
Is that beer?
It's
Beer and wine.
beer and wine, and then we have a tobacco license for the same facility. Has anybody heard or had any problems with, heard of any problems with the liquor license for that facility?
Beer sometimes isn't cold, but yeah.
I consistently note that they like actively card people, you know, in terms, like, my concerns about licensing is less about the temperature of the beer and more about
How
not
many
selling
did
to
he get you?
minors. And they've always been pretty responsive about it.
All right.
Bit of a small community.
So I'd entertain a motion to accept the second-class liquor license for Vermont Staple Goods.
So, second.
So we got a, so moved by Katie, seconded by Rob. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
5-0. Because they don't do anything for lines, I'm just gonna have you sign you all sign on this, follow my name, and it's all generated out of the computer system, and at least you won't get hung up on which side to sign. The next one is tobacco license for the same facility. And we haven't had any problems with that one. Did you know of? Heard of? Okay. Entertain a motion to accept the tobacco license for Riverbend Market.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
5-0. Just right under. Okay, so that takes care of that. That takes care of that. Okay. Do we have any public comment before we go into executive session? Go ahead.
At the last meeting, there was discussion about the local emergency management plan, and I got a copy of it, and it seems like there's a good matrix there, a basic scaffold, but I didn't see any details. And I went back in some of my records, and I looked at what David Diesendorf had, and this goes back some time now, and it was an 18-page document that I had gotten that was a draft, and I know it was refined. And it had a lot of details.
Don't exist anymore.
They don't exist.
So what we have now is just this scaffold. It doesn't have a lot of detail in there. And you raised a very good question about people who are vulnerable. Do we as a town have knowledge of where those vulnerable people are, how to contact them? I mean, I raised a question about the last storm. Can we use it as a learning experience, an after-action experience? Let's learn from this. And again, my review of the local emergency management plan is it's light. I've only written one myself. I've reviewed many. There's not a lot here.
Not supposed to be.
Sherwood, there's not enough information here for me to be able to tell very much about how town handles emergencies.
Okay.
Whether it's a snowstorm, a high wind event, an earthquake, no matter what.
Is your name on the plan?
I'm sorry?
Is your name on the plan?
It's-
Are you
it's
tasked
the
with a
town of
job on the
Townsend.
plan?
It's the town of Townshend Emergency Management Plan.
Did you hear what I said? Is your name on the plan?
No, why would it be?
Correct, because you don't have a job function within that matrix. That's why you don't have it.
I'm a resident of town and I'm looking at how this is gonna impact future emergencies, and I don't see enough meat here.
That's all you're gonna see, because that's what's submitted to the state every year for the last 5 years. They modified it 3 years ago to knock less paperwork out of it.
So Green Mountain Power made the point of they couldn't contact our highway foreman. These are the kind of things that need to be in here. Contact
We'll take that
information needs to be
situation
in
right
here.
there. The power was out on that end of town. There's no phone to the garage. There's no phone at his house. And it doesn't matter if you can't use those things, who you got to talk to, who you had to touch base with.
So why don't we have an emergency generator down there? Why don't we have an emergency generator at our places that are supposed to be warming facilities? I mean,
We don't
there's,
have it.
So
We did.
We don't.
what I hear you
It's in that
saying
plan.
is, what I hear you saying is that you would like the select board to revisit the town, what was the policy that you're, the whatever?
It's not a policy, it's the emergency management plan.
The emergency management plan?
yes.
Okay.
And actually does state in that plan that Leland and Gray is a potential warming shelter during time.
It does, yes.
Isn't that-
What I would like to ask is, in the event that we just had where there's 3-4 feet of snow, whatever we had anywhere you're at, who's gonna come operate these things? It's like you can't even get out of your house. And it's
That's
like
one-
now all of a sudden you want somebody to come operate something to help somebody out of their crisis. Well, they're in their own crisis.
That's just one emergency instance. that doesn't mean that the next emergency is gonna be 5 feet of wet snow. It could be flooding, it could be strong winds, it could be any number of things. They're not all the same, but we are gonna be guaranteed it's gonna happen. And people need to know what they can do within the parameters of that time period in order to help each other and to help themselves. That's all we're asking.
As a 845 new select board member, I would be happy to take a look at that and review it by the next meeting and just share my insights on it to report out to you. What to hear you and look at it.
So I've
If
also,
you
I know
also-
it's separate than an emergency management plan, but I have been calling around, talking to people. I spoke to Karen at the library, I've spoken to Alenka, I've spoken to Rob, I have talked to the people, a person from the social services committee. I've been trying to find, there's a list of services for people. I'm just speaking mutual aid. Outside of what I always tell everybody, which is just be a good neighbor and knock on your neighbor's doors. Outside of that, finding phone numbers for people to call ahead of an emergency, during an emergency, if they have phone. Just any resources for any person who needs help in our town, so that we at least have something for people to be able to do. And this, I'm speaking completely separate from what you're talking about with an emergency management plan. I'm talking about the day-to-day life of a human being who lives in our town, being able to call somebody, whether it's their neighbor or the Red Cross, or, you know, one thing that I found out was that a lot of people didn't know that if a tree fell across your road, you actually call the state police and then they call Steve or the, you know, the road crew, and then they deal with that, because I think a lot of people don't know things like that. So I have, as a select board member and a member of this community, been trying to find these resources, compile them, and put them somewhere where people can find them, because another piece of feedback that I've been given is that a lot of times a person in need, and again, I'm speaking mutual aid or people in need, they don't want to ask for the help. They want to be able to come to a bulletin board, find the help, and call the phone number on their own. So I have been doing that. Please rest assured that is something that's in motion, and my part that I thought I could actually mobilize on as people brought up concerns.
And speaking of being proactive, we do offer a form for anybody who you know is vulnerable, anybody in Townsend who is vulnerable. They can fill out this form and it will go to our emergency management director, and we know that they are potentially in danger. Yeah, Alenka's got a ton of them. Yeah.
Is there more than?
This is the one. And then Alenka's got she's compiled so many resources for, to help people who, you know, whether it's food insecurity or, you know,
And
vulnerable
Karen at the
population.
library as
And
well.
Karen as well, so.
And if we put that in a mailing, or how do we get that out to folks?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Okay.
That's something, that's why I've been asking so many questions of so many different people. Because I want to know, how do we do that? How, you know?
Problem that you run into is that the state did this along with 211 post-Irene, and it all became kind of closed information. Like I said, when this topic was being discussed before with power people, you have access to it when we open up an emergency operations center, but it's only for that emergency, and then you have to destroy it. So
Can't you open a public forum for if people choose to be on that
well,
list?
there's some places that you can do it on Facebook and those things, but you're also talking about compromising people's security. You know, you go posting this information, and it's especially on Facebook, it's ripe for somebody to grab and kind of goad these people into giving up personal private information, or we're collecting for this or whatever. So those types of things you have to be really, really careful about.
But we're basically talking about, I think, just people being aware, being able to be aware of who do they contact or what do they do. They don't have to give any personal information in that instance. They just need to have access to information. That's it. And right now, there is none.
That was a good point about enabling people to know who's in town, not in town, things like that. But one of the things we learned from Irene those who were here for that. Before Sandy, I got an email talking about severe weather and what to do in Townsend if you were impacted. Again, we can learn from these things, so let's try to see what we can do for vulnerable people, how to get that information out to folks. I mean, there are lots of things we can learn from these events.
And not everybody, I mean, not just vulnerable people, I mean, sometimes people become vulnerable because of the event. You know, that maybe weren't in a situation where they needed help previous to that.
I mean, maybe it sounds logical to just have hubs where I mean, this is a very small community, all said and done. If there's one way to communicate to people, say, out by us, hey, can you check in on Chuck and Judy? Hey, can you check in on Joanne? Hey, can you check in on the Kings for us? Hey, can you do this? That's no problem for a lot of people. But getting that line to them and being able to communicate back seems like it's simple and logical. Like,
A lot of those things happen when you stay in a town over the course of time because you grow mutual with the people that are next to you. So the people that you're talking about, by the time you're at your house on Stiles Brook for set amount of time, you grow a relationship with these people.
Oh, we already have. We went and checked out.
No, but I'm saying that once you stay there for a long time, you really grow a relationship, and it's not just Chuck and Judy and Nelson and Linda and these different people. The point is that it grows. These people move out, the next people move in, you acquire the same relationship.
I'm saying I had no way to get in contact with you guys to say, hey,
there's nothing that we're going to be able to do. We're in the same boat that most of the people are in.
During that last situation.
Shortwave radio or walkie-talkies, anything that
That's fine. I'm going to be like, hey, I'm stuck at my house too.
Right. But the point is the check-in. Did you check on them? Are they okay? Are they, are they okay? Are you okay?
Radios are something that are easy to buy and easy to use. However, the ones that you can buy and use won't get you past your driveway. Even the ones that we have here for the highway department, the fire department, you're lucky you can talk down the street on them because we don't have the repeater system, we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the things that make that.
Right.
We got one cell tower in town, right up there, and that's it.
So it's coming up with solutions instead of just saying, well, these are the problems, these are the problems, these are the problems. It's about what are the solutions, because there are a ton of people that are willing to put their hands in until they keep on hitting the same walls over and over. Well, that's a problem.
I've been doing this for a long time, and I know what the state tells me that I can do, and there's no wiggle room, okay?
Doing what?
I was a cop for nearly 30 years, and I've been the emergency management director here in town for the last 3. I have all of these contacts. I fostered all of these contacts, and every time you bring something down, they tell you there's 6 reasons why you can't do it. So if people are going to survive these things, it has to be small clusters, small groups that take care, like she was talking about. Now that doesn't involve getting in touch with us because we're in the same situation. I mean, I could not literally, this building was out of power. This building could not operate as an emergency warming shelter.
It could have on Wednesday.
This place is a barn, Laura. It's a barn.
So also, as a person that works at the school, and like the school would have been the site, the school could not. We did not have sustainable electricity, internet, or phone service, like well into by Thursday things were anyway. It's just.
Phoebe, could that be a warming center? I was wondering about that. They can't do all of the amenities, but there's a wood stove in there, right? Or a fireplace?
No, it's so there's
pellet stove.
It's a pellet. Well, anyway.
It's a wood fire chip burner.
The answer to that is there used to be memorandums of understanding in place between the school and the town hall. I don't know if that still exists. That's how Sherwood and I first worked together.
Okay.
Where we had that in place that would happen. The school does have some amount of a generator capacity depending, etc. But again, this specific event that we're talking about I feel like we're gonna just talk ourselves silly because there were so many pieces to it that were unique. I recognize that it's gonna, more things are going to continue to happen. And so having the structure of a plan in place, both in terms of like the town plan, as well as maybe a more like community people driven emergency plan. Because I would feel very strange calling a community member saying, can you go check on this person who I'm now telling you?
Not if they signed up for it.
Well, sure, but anyway, but what I'm saying is that could be done through a sort of separate, more detailed community support emergency response plan.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Valley Cares has had two different problems within the past 10 years. One was a fire and one was a sprinkler system flooded. Both times, Leland and Gray High School stepped right to the beat of the drum and accepted anybody to go in there that needed to come from Valley Cares for a place to stay, warm, dry, cots, water provided.
I mean, we
The
did
whole
that
nine
for
yards.
we
It
did
would-
that for
people-
our students and our staff during this
So,
event for the
this
rest
is,
of the week.
you know,
Like, get a shower. Like, I mean, people were showering at the schools. People were
The
doing
school
laundry.
has stepped
like,
up before in the past. They don't leave us high and dry when emergencies come
Right.
to our hands.
I'm wondering if putting.
Is everything perfect?
Yeah.
No.
It's never gonna be.
And it's like when you have a situation like we just went through this winter, that tests the resilience of people.
Or was it only available to students?
This was not available.
Oh,
It was
gotcha.
not available as a piece of the emergency response. Once school got back up and running and we had so many staff and students that still didn't have access to basic amenities. And that being said, like the school is already the source of basic amenities for many students and staff as it is. Like that is a source of basic, whether it's laundry or like
Okay.
it's
And there
But
is-
it's students and staff, it's not in general for the town as a rule, unless.
it is for the community because it is
We don't pay
community
for it.
because well it is for the community members who attend the school who are like is it open to the full community? It's open to public school students. You know what I mean?
Well, my
Like
point is that when the town has been in need of care to people, the school has stepped forward and let people in. Plain and simple. They have.
Except that last one.
no, it wasn't
They
an
weren't
option.
available for that last storm.
We couldn't. It wasn't even
I didn't
communicated
talk about this.
or an adequate site. We couldn't have hosted it
Okay.
because per
But if
safe.
you've had a generator, if there's been a generator in place.
There is one.
There's nobody there though. Who's gonna get there to
Well,
run the
and
generator? Who's gonna
people-
open the
people
door
were
up? Who's gonna
there.
let people in? They can't get there.
But again, all the different, like we have staff that live we could have done these things, but again, the uniqueness of this specific storm, as well as the question of, I'm not sure where the MOUs are between the school and the town. That yes, it would have been done,
It's an option maybe in some future emergency, but not in this past one.
yeah.
Okay.
Any site that we're going to be offering as a town has to meet the basic security
the Red
and
Cross
safety
guidelines.
levels.
The Red Cross
Those
has to
batteries,
respect
those
it.
wall battery units are a game changer for communities. It's a game changer. Like we saw it in California, we've seen it across the country. It's a game changer. Like so, any way to subsidize those through state programs, federal programs, that's the way to go. Yeah.
I was surprised.
Now, we also need a facility that can deal with that too.
As far as shipping and
Place to put them,
oh, warehousing space?
place to put them to make them useful.
They go right in your house.
Yeah, but it's not gonna do much good for the general public to have them sitting in
Absolutely,
my
every
house.
single person to have one in every one of their houses,
It's
that's what,
about $5,000.
that's what the, but the state subsidized it, and the Fed subsidizes it.
Yeah,
That's a-
that's to keep you from having to pay $20,000 for them. So,
California gave them away for free, too, per house. Just-
California's got a pollution control problem that would be
Correct.
the rest of the world together.
But I think that, once again, it's like, you know, like maybe it is something we can do as a community, look into like getting it a heavier subsidized and having it like on a grid, where per neighborhood, there is at least one house that's on a battery.
She did say that the Green Mountain Power might even be able to help people.
Right, but they also said their own.
But again, I'm telling you that there's no place to set that up that's a town facility. None whatsoever. So you can have all the batteries you want strung here to Brattleboro and back, and you still can't plug them into anything that belongs to the town.
No, these are, yeah.
Aren't they the batteries that store electricity for you while you're on the grid, and then you can use it when the grid goes down? Yeah. And sometimes even mount on the exterior.
Yeah, Tesla makes them.
I'm not understanding why the town can't.
Well, we've got to move on, so let's, we have an executive session that we have to deal with. This is going to go nowhere fast. Entertain a motion to enter into executive session under two principles. One VSA 313E for discussion with a potential employee, and under section
Thank you for coming.
3133 for a legal issue.
We need a motion.
Okay, we got a motion, and it's seconded. We got it seconded. All those in favor signify by saying
Thank
aye.
you.
Aye.
Thank you guys.
Who's second?
Thanks for the time.
No.
No, he did.
Okay.
She.